Dean's like, wait a minute.
I'm just working on the right hand stuff.
No, you get flustered. Never seen it.
There's no right.
Okay, good evening and welcome to the Timberlane Regional School Board meeting for Thursday, April 18th, 2019. I'd like to start off with a moment of silence for our troops that put themselves in harm's way. Okay, if we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yep. Okay, our first item is a roll call. Mrs. Belcher?
Brian Boyle. Lee Doobie.
Here.
Kim Farah.
Here.
Sheila Lowe's.
Here.
Sarah Mockamer. Sean O'Neill.
Present.
Kristen Savage. Sue Sherman.
Here.
Jennifer Silva.
Here.
Also seated at the board table this evening is the Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Roxanne Wilson. The presence of other district administrators as well as Timberlane Teachers Association officers will be reflected in the meeting minutes.
Okay. First item is approval of the minutes. We'll start out with the April 4th, 2019, 7 o'clock. Take a motion to approve those minutes.
Move to accept the minutes as written.
Okay. Kim?
Just on the transportation update on page 2, I wouldn't mind adding for David Fairweather and Colton Graham that they're first student representatives, just so it's clear. Because
Sure.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Leah seconded it. I'll give a couple more minutes for people to finish reading.
Hi, Kristen.
Hi, Sue.
Nice sweatshirt.
Thank you. Do you have a pen?
Thank you.
No, it's so fun. Yeah. There's 2 sets of people. There's no problem.
Thanks.
You're so good.
Okay, we all set with those minutes? Okay, I'm gonna call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Or abstaining? Unanimous.
So
Okay.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate it for our viewers at home, so it gets recorded on the tape that you would speak the vote out loud each time. It just helps, because the viewers can't see what the vote is,
In regards to the motion passing, or?
saying
Number.
800.
Okay, I will do that, 800. Thank you. And if I do forget, would you please call me on it?
Certainly.
Okay, our next
We have one more
topic.
set of minutes.
Oh, yes,
for
yes,
the
there's a second one.
Yep, so, I'm going around. You can take one. And these are sealed.
I just didn't know
I'll make a motion to accept the April 4th non-public session minutes.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, call for a vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? All those abstained? Passes 800. Collect, please. Thank you. All right, our next agenda is our student representative, who I know Nick is not going to be here this evening, but I believe we do have an update from him.
I do, and if you don't mind, I'd like to just read it. He does a nice job with gathering the information and reporting out,
Yes, he
so.
does.
Atkinson Academy. The fifth graders from Atkinson Academy, as well as the sixth graders from the middle school, took a trip to the PAC on Tuesday, where they learned the importance of internet safety from the guest speaker, Katie Greer. She returned to the elementary schools to present to the third and fourth graders. It was a great presentation, and the students learned a lot. In Danville Elementary, on April 11th, Mr. Derek Small treated the pre-K and the kindergarten and the first graders at Danville Elementary to his wildlife encounter presentation with 6 diverse animals from all over the globe. This was a great opportunity for students to witness some cool animals and to learn more about them. Also new at the elementary school, Cup Stacking Club was begun, where students learned to speed stack the cups and had lots of fun doing it. And a big thank you to Mr. Ard for making this club a reality. Pollard School, on April 13th, the community gathered for the annual Run of the Savages at Pollard School, which is not only a great time every year, but a great cause. And it always is amazing to see people of all ages gather for such a high-spirited event. So thank you all to those who were involved. On April 11th, the Pollard School students performed their musical, How Does Your Garden Grow?, which the packed audience loved. All of the students should be very proud. Sandown North, 22 students from Sandown North were invited to the Southern New Hampshire University Regional Invention Convention after their hard work with their creations, and 2 students, Ella Hill in 5th grade and Nicholas Vacareza, sorry if I mispronounced you, in 4th grade, were invited to the National Convention in Michigan next month. So congratulations, good luck Ella and Nicholas. The kindergartens at Sandown Central have been hard at work preparing for the STEAM Day, where the Museum of Science traveling show came in and worked with the kids on their engineering concepts and how to construct bridges. The day was very successful and the students had a great time. At the middle school, on May 10th and 11th at 7 p.m. at the PAC, The middle school will be performing their production of a fairy tale adventure with over 50 students involved. This is sure to be an amazing show, and it's great to see so many getting involved. 8th grade Spanish classes were also treated to an in-school flamenco class. Flamenco is a type of dancing originating in Spain, and the students had the pleasure of learning from a professional dancer, Laura Sanchez. The students and teachers really enjoyed it. At the high school, on April 13th, Project Hope put on their annual Strut for a Cure fashion show, where they more than doubled their goal for the season and raised over $22,000 to support local families and cancer nonprofits. The show itself was a great time and brought together the whole community for this fantastic cause. This week was also Spirit Week for the students at the high school, with plenty of cool costumes and events that made the week very special to the whole school. On May 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, the Timberlane Players will be performing their production of South Pacific at the PAC Auditorium. Everyone involved has worked extremely hard, and because of that show, it is sure to be nothing but amazing. So thank you, Nick, for your comments here about all the school events.
Okay, thank you, Nick, and thank you, Dr. Wilson, for
You're
filling in.
welcome.
Okay, our next agenda item is our delegates and individuals.
There are none.
There are none. Okay, so we'll move on to our first topic then, of our main agenda. For current business is the SPED Trend Annual Report.
Susan Rassico will join you to talk to you about the NESDEC report.
So I believe you have this packet, this information in your packet. I didn't prepare a presentation for you. It just was a request for the information, but I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay. Dr. Farah?
I haven't had too much time to take a look at this. I imagine that you've taken a good look at it.
I have taken a look at it.
What are your thoughts?
Well, for me, when I look at the trends, there's no surprise in the rise that we're seeing. I think that's the biggest piece for going before the Budget Committee the past number of years. I'm always saying that the opioid crisis has impacted our programming. Students that are facing trauma are not necessarily special education, but we deal with it in special education. And so those ramifications are significant. Because when a student is traumatized, we're now faced, since 2015, with a group of students that also need supports in the family. And a lot of times we're having to provide that support through the out-of-district placement, through our system, and help the parents to equalize so that the students can return to their home. So I don't think that there was really any surprise for me. It validated in some ways what I have presented. You will see that there is, so for the purpose of the viewing audience who doesn't have this information, we're basically seeing a decline in 2017. There were a number of students that aged out of the program, so that is part of the decline. But you're also seeing that 9 to 12, we have many options that we are providing students now that are meeting their individual needs. So that's why you're not seeing as much of a decline. They're not going out, but they are being supported in district. The estimate, I can tell you, for 2018, 2019, at 785 IEPs will go up, but we really don't know that. So that's information that I'd like to at some point share with you again, so you have final numbers. But I feel as though this baseline trend information it's pretty much no surprise to me.
We had a 10% drop from 17-18 to 18-19, so you feel that it's going to go back up instead of the downward trend?
What I would like to see is more of a downward trend. I'd like to get us back to more where we were in, say, 2015-16 was an exceptionally low year for us. If you look at the trend, realistically, it would be nice to see it continue to go down, but I feel as though we need to have some programming in-house that we would be looking at in order to bring back some of our students. In honesty, that there are students that we wouldn't be able to bring back because of safety concerns to themselves and others. But, looking at the trends by disability category is another piece of what I'm compiling now, so that we can start to look at those pieces. In our TILA groups, with the administrators, we are looking at programming and reaching needs. And so that's something else that we are working on in that area.
Okay. Jen?
This shows numbers, but I don't, is there a trend in, or any cluster of a particular reason why
Yeah.
you would?
We've had a rise.
I know there's like,
Yep.
ones and different reasons for everybody, but
Right.
is there any?
I think overall, that's one of the shortcomings of this trend. You're not seeing it by disability. I can tell you that in the past 2 months, we've had to seek interim alternative ed placements because of students that pose a safety threat to themselves and others. The piece I can share with you is it's a 45-day evaluation timeframe, and it gives us the opportunity to have someone take an outside look and then develop an opportunity for a student back in district when it's reasonable. But I would say, to answer your question, Jen, there really isn't it's more our trauma-involved kiddos that have lost family members due to the crisis, the opioid crisis that's here.
Okay.
One of the things that somebody mentioned to me, and this could be totally off base, is that if we provide greater intervention services at a younger age, that we could perhaps ultimately reduce the number of IEPs that we have as these students move from middle up to high school. I know there was a request for math interventionalists from all the schools 2 years ago. That was not asked for this past year. I think it had more to do with budgetary direction as opposed to need. So what is your thought on that statement?
Well, I think there's two parts to that statement. So in terms of research, when you're providing front-loading more services at an earlier age, the level of intervention does decrease over time. But even with some of our trauma students, we have students as young as kindergarten at this point in time that are so traumatized, to have them even be safe in a building is not an option for them now. So that would hamper my being able to say to you, yes, if we front load for every situation, it's going to help. I feel that we are looking at a number of different, not so much interventions. We have a three-tiered system that's working, and I think better communication of that three-tiered system in our IEP process is going to help us educate our families to see how much support is provided right now in our general ed classrooms, and then what needs to be delivered additionally. Another piece to that is when you talk about front-loading the interventions, taking a look at the interventions that could be in the classroom with some team teaching in specific courses, so that students have the opportunity to get the assistance right there in the moment, is another option that we're looking at. So I think that the interventions, yes, in most cases. I think we also have to look at the number of years over time that intervention needs to be delivered for some of our students. So I think for a child that comes in with some related service issues, providing those related services to them early on is helpful and does benefit them. And we have seen that for our students. And some students move from an IEP to a 504. But I think we need to have a better focus on the trends in terms of the disability categories and how we're focused in those areas as well.
So you'll be looking at this in a deeper level, is what you're saying?
Much deeper. It's already started, to be honest.
Did you find this information helpful at all? It's something that it's provided to the district?
Well, the thing is that I've used this in another state. And if I can have you just go and take a look at the total collaborative expenditures, because I think it will help to shed some light. In Massachusetts, we have collaboratives. These
Hang on
collaborative,
one second.
Yep,
Can you-
sorry.
Can you,
the pages, I apologize, are not numbered. Dr. Farrell, it looks like this.
This one,
the one that
little orange boxes.
just has orange boxes
Yep.
on it? Okay.
So when you look at that, and the trends, it says that the district is not a member of collaboratives. Collaboratives in other states are, school districts join a membership, they pay a membership fee, and then they have access to services at reduced costs. If a collaborative, that's a school, if they form and they don't have enough participants in the district, they can then have openings in other places. For us, Massachusetts is so close by, we're able to access the collaboratives, but it's out-of-state tuition. And that cost has gone up 5% in this, two budget cycles ago. So that's rising up.
So are you saying that we need to form our own in-state collaboratives in this region?
If you ask me to, I will.
Okay, go ahead.
I think the piece for us is that the state of New Hampshire, in all fairness, is not receptive to that. The closest we came was Ceresc. For those of you that don't know, that was the greatest form of a collaborative, and it's no longer existing. So it's not always conducive. However, I would absolutely look into a way to really start programming in district that we could have for ourselves. I'm not so sure we could loan our program out, but we could look into that.
I mean, I think it's something that we need to really consider, because when I look at these trend lines, I'm frightened. I mean, I know the viewers can't see this, but we've got lines
going up.
going probably at, I would say, close to a 45-degree angle.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think we really need to, and I'm sure other districts are having the same sort of issue.
It's national.
Well, it's a national, well, I'm sure, but,
Right.
you know, as with, I'm in a small college, we join small colleges together so that we can get some more buying power, say for
Right.
insurance or something. I think, and I hate to put it on you, but somebody's got to take the initiative here to
Right.
try to see what we can do to try to help all these districts here so that this budget doesn't keep trending
Right.
tremendously upward. So I certainly can't direct you to do that. I don't know. Dr. Wilson might have some more insight into how we might go about trying to get other districts, especially with Ceresc on. I mean, the superintendent did say that we were going to have issues, and clearly we are, and we're going to be heading into another budget cycle soon.
Right.
I think also to add, this also mirrors the same problem that we've had for a number of years, because the state is not paying their obligation of the special ed expenses in the districts. And, you know, we fight that battle every single year. The proration always becomes, you know, a little bit more we have to pay rather than the state. So it's also the revenue that we keep losing through the process, you know, that we have with the state right now. As far as collaboratives, in 1974, the Ceresc Collaborative started for this very reason.
Right.
And I was part of that startup a long time ago, and it was really around bringing resources together for special ed students.
Right.
And then, you know, things over 20, 25, 30 years, focus changed, you know, services changed. Many of the districts decided to do it on their own. We lost the collaborative process. And so it's very hard to start up a collaborative in New Hampshire because we don't have many. And it's always been, we'll take care of our own kids, as opposed to having to bus them across town or district lines. So, but I agree that there is much more of a need for this social emotional piece that we've been seeing in the last 2 years, and you can see it in the rise of our students' expenditures here. And you see it in the national headlines and the state headlines about the kids with, you know, social emotional needs. Through various processes, various reasons. But if we can address some of those issues, which is why we have hired more social workers, I think that has helped immensely, because we're able to have someone with expertise to go in and help families who need that. And they're able to kind of hook parents up with resources. And I know, Mrs. Rassico really needs that person on the ground to do that with families. So we spend more money on some of those services and staff members. There isn't one simple answer, and that's, I think, what we struggle with when we look at this data. It's all variable, dependent upon student by student.
And with the exponential increasing that Dr. Farah has pointed on out, this definitely reflects on the budgetary, because it's all these programs are gonna be fighting for the same taxpayer dollars. So
Right.
if this is going up and we can't control it, it's gonna take those funds that we would normally expect in sort of an increase. We have to rob from other departments to pay for that. So yes, we definitely gotta find a way to get this expenditure under control.
Well, and I think as well, and I don't want to speak for you, but I know we've talked a lot about this, is we're kind of in a catch-22, because in order to meet the needs of some of these students, we have to have the staff with some expertise. So that does mean we have to pay more. If we don't have those staff, it's hard for us to sometimes have a successful place for kids to be. They end up having to be outplaced, and there's a very therapeutic environment in a school or a facility, 3 towns away, but now we have to pay tuition and we have to bus them. So, we can either try to do it ourselves, which is we've been doing more and more by, looking at psychologists and increasing our social workers.
Right.
But on the other hand, if you don't have those resources, it ends up being more of an out-of-district placement.
Out-of-district placement for last year was 2.1 million, and it's up to 2.6 million for this year. So that's roughly a 25% increase.
Mm-hmm.
That's not sustainable.
Yes, yes, we agree.
Okay, and that's, Jen?
But I think Susan has a plan in terms of looking at this deeper. We already have had some conversations about it.
Right.
This is a starting place for us, and then
Right,
looking at it a little bit deeper as we go through the next couple of months.
right.
Jen?
When you spoke to, we use a 3-tiered system, can you just give the
Sure, so tier 1 is in the classroom, tier 2 is in the classroom, tier 3 would be special ed involvement. One of the models we're looking at is actually to have students in classrooms where the services come to them. And then being able to pull them out for that targeted individual piece, so that they're in the classroom longer, for longer periods of time. One of the creative solutions that we've already started is for some of our students who really need a lot of sensory input. Some of the schools already have a sensory room where students can access the materials and tools that they need. We also have asked occupational therapists to go in and take a look at the rooms and define the purpose for the room, so a student is going into the environment and really knowing where they go to do what they need to do. So on a very simple level, they have toolboxes to help them with what they need to address sensory-wise, but then for some students where it would be too disruptive in the classroom, they have the opportunity to take a break to go in and focus in those target areas. We've trialed it in 2 buildings, and it's been effective. And so now we're looking at what I feel is an underutilized resource in our district, our occupational therapists, to really take a look at a lot of our kids who just can't sit still to sustain a lesson and find new ways to get them active in the classroom.
Any other questions? If not,
Susan, I just want to thank you for bringing
You're
this
welcome.
to us. It's taken quite a long time.
Yep.
So
You're welcome.
I hope it was helpful. It's helpful for me to see it in a graphical
Right.
form as opposed to, I see the budget numbers, but
Right.
seeing it this way really is telling.
It paints the picture, yeah.
and I would just ask if you can bring us any suggestions on how we can help you. do it,
Great, sure,
please.
yep,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome,
Thank you, Susan.
you're welcome.
Okay.
Strategic plan. Yes, in your packet, I've given you some background context. You've seen this before, but I just thought you probably didn't have it with you, so your strategic plan at a glance talks about the 5 goals that we have in place. And then the next 3 or 4 pages are right from the strategic plan, and that's really looking at how we broke those goals down into short goals and some action steps. And I think I've asked the committee chairs here to come and give you an update, which you also have in your packet. They're one page, kind of here's where we're starting, here's where we are, to give you an idea of some of the activities that have been done. And I think the important thing to know is that this is somewhat fluid, these graphs and charts here. We created these through the process, but because we're actually living this plan now, they might be revised based on where we are at the moment and what we're finding. So even some of these action steps here it's kind of our guide that we follow, but in the next year or two, we may find that some of these action steps are going to be revised. And that's through the process of all of you who've also been involved with our strategic planning committees. So we appreciate that. So I'd like to start with the academics, Christy, and then we'll move to Mrs. Rassico for the climate, and then we'll follow up with Mr. Gary on the facilities.
So as Dr. Wilson said, there's 3 significant portions to the strategic plan. The plan, or the part of the plan that I'll share a little bit of an update with you about tonight is the section identified as academics, rigor, and 21st century learning. The first 6 months of the implementation of the strategic plan has been very productive, especially for this particular area. We have found that our committees district-wide have found that this strategic plan to be very helpful to them, as it's guided a lot of the goal setting, a lot of the work that has progressed throughout our district. So I'll talk with you this evening about some of the evidence that has been collected over the last 6 months, and it'll help you to have an understanding of how we're moving the strategic plan forward. The plan actually is monitored each month by the School Board Curriculum and Assessment Committee. And that particular committee has been charged and is responsible for monitoring the plan. This particular committee has both school and district representation, and 2 of your board members, Sarah and Ms. Sherman. And what we do each month is bring evidence and talk about how we're progressing through the plan. So tonight, I will share each of the 2 major goals. We have 2 significant goals. We've got 7 objectives, and then we have numerous action steps. So I'm going to just give you a little sense of each of them, because otherwise we'd be probably going on for over an hour. So the first goal is that the Timberlane Regional School District will engage pre-K-12 students in personalized, competency-based educational experiences to include 21st century knowledge and skills needed to be successful in school, work, and life. Below this particular goal, we've got 3 objectives. The first one speaks to personalized learning opportunities. And as our teachers are beginning to implement and provide more personalized learning options for students in the classrooms, they have been developing their own capacity and have been involved with quite a bit of training over the course of this year. We've been able this year to provide teachers with some ongoing and some job embedded training. So as this topic's come up a couple of times with the board, sort of that idea of professional learning, where our teachers are taking advantage of workshops and conferences and things outside of the district. Well, what I'm about to talk with you a little bit about is some of the trainers and the consultants that we've been able to bring into the district and to work with our teachers sort of in a job embedded approach, where they might have some sub-coverage in their classroom for a short period of time while they're working with the consultant, while they're working with the trainer. But then the trainer has been able to go into their classrooms, observe, give some feedback, and work more collaboratively with the teachers as they increase and develop their skill sets. So we've been able to do that in elementary mathematics this year. We also have a consultant working with our elementary teachers in the area of writing. And we've brought some science trainers in as well to help our teachers learn more about not only building their capacity in terms of teaching in those content areas, but also learning how to provide students with more of a personalized approach to be more learner-centered and flexible. Our secondary schools, we've had a couple of cohorts of teachers from the 6-12 level that have been involved with an approach training called Universal Design for Learners. We call that UDL. And those teachers at the secondary level have been implementing various tools, resources, and strategies, again, to help our students to maximize learning, to engage our students, and to personalize a bit. We also have our IT and technology committee that have begun to have some conversations about how to better integrate the technology in the classrooms. So not just getting our students onto Chromebooks and using our dedicated devices, but really using them to build those 21st learning skills. How are we getting our students to interact with the technology, to problem solve, to create, to think, and to develop those higher order thinking skills. And so that's been some of the work that our technology committee has begun to take a look at, and to explore some options for some coaching with our teachers and in supporting the instructional work in the classrooms. The second objective speaks to the pre-K-12 STEAM opportunities. This year we convened a STEAM and enrichment committee. We've got representation from technology teachers. We've got our middle school and high school STEAM teachers that are on that particular committee, as well as our elementary enrichment teachers. And what they're doing is they're taking a look at the pre-K-12 learning progression and starting to identify places where we could incorporate more hands-on experiences, more skill development in the area of computing and coding. The other thing is that our state is, they have not yet released the computer science standards, but we've been able to take a look at drafts, and we're starting to make sense of those draft standards and have some conversations about how we're going to incorporate those computer science standards as young as the elementary levels. So that's been some exciting work as well. Our Title IV competitive grant has allowed our elementary schools to run after-school science camps. Also through the school budgets and the curriculum budget, we've been able to purchase some supplies and materials to support STEAM activities at the school level, as well as to support some of the activities that our individual classroom teachers are beginning to incorporate in their classrooms as well. Just sort of moving on to the third objective there in your handout. That particular objective is talking about the implementation of the competency-based education throughout our district. Speaks to providing students with more project-based learning opportunities, some of the performance-based assessments as opposed to those standardized assessments, starting to move away from those types of assessments and getting our students involved in more of a performance type, interactive type assessment. And so we've got our elementary and our secondary grading and reporting committees that meet monthly. They've been heavily involved in developing protocols, talking and collaborating together to develop communication tools to get out to not just our teachers to help support the competency-based grading and reporting work that the teachers are doing, but also to better help our parents to better understand that that sort of shift. We're a hybrid district, so we're not doing away with any of our traditional grading, but we're starting to provide parents with more information about how students are acquiring skills and what it looks like when they're when students have become more competent, when they're starting to take those skills that they've acquired and apply and transfer those skills into new and different tasks. So that has been a slight change at the elementary level. At grade 6 this year, we've been providing parents with more information about competencies. And the committees are also working towards preparations for grades 7 and 8. So next year, grade 7 and 8, parents and students will also get some additional information about competencies. Moving on to goal number 2. That particular goal speaks about attracting, hiring, developing our professional educators throughout the district, supporting their professional needs, and helping our teachers to engage students in that rigorous curriculum in 21st century learning. I wanted to share with you that one of the major things that we've done in terms of the professional learning is the Professional Development Committee has their main responsibility is to prepare for the March Professional Development Day. That day took place on March 28th and was one of the best professional learning days that we have had in our district in years. I say in terms of the one that we create for March. And the reason for that is oftentimes what's happening on that particular day is it's professional learning that's offered by our teachers. So we had several teachers and staff members within our own district that presented on important topics, and the Professional Development Committee was also able to bring in several presenters from the outside. We were just talking about some of the social emotional needs, and that's really what this day focused on, was helping and geared more towards helping our staff to build knowledge and understanding of those increasing challenges that are affecting our students and their families, especially around the topics of trauma, substance abuse, bullying, mental health. So it was a grand day. It really was. We got lots and lots of staff feedback. It was overwhelmingly positive. Teachers, they left that day with very specific ways to adapt their instructional practices in the classroom and to also help them to better understand how to better serve the students in their rooms each day. Along those same lines of the first objective, some additional training that we've done for our staff to help them and to support them professionally. You'll see there a couple of bullet points that speak to the NGSX science training that we brought in for teachers in grades 3 through 8, our guided math training. That was a 2-part training. We started that in August, continued into November, and we've done some ongoing supportive work with our teachers throughout the course of the year. And again, that was really focused on trying to help raise the achievement levels in the sciences as well as in the area of mathematics. Second objective there speaks a bit to our communication, our beliefs, understandings, practices around STEAM education as well as competency-based education. You'll see there that there's a little bit of a highlight of the work that our grading and reporting committees have done. If I move on to objective 3, talking about reevaluating our mentoring and induction program. Though we didn't have any specific action items in the 1920 school year within the strategic plan that spoke to objective number 3, I did want to point out that we did establish a committee, and that particular committee is taking a look at our current model for mentoring and induction. And the committee members have also started to create a survey. We're looking to solicit input from teachers that have more recently been through our mentoring and induction program and those that perhaps had been part of the mentoring and induction program for years, including some of our mentors. And we're going to use that input from our teachers to make improvements to the mentoring and induction program, make sure that it's really serving our new staff well. Because again, this whole goal is about attracting, hiring, developing, and retaining good professional educators. Let's see. Objective number 4. This part of the strategic plan, there was some real strong interest in figuring out and determining how we can motivate and incentivize our educators to be career professionals in the Timberlane Regional School District. One of the things that we had brainstormed with staff was ways that they could be incentivized to work on special projects and things that were of interest to them. We can do that through what we call SIM funds, which is school improvement money. What our teachers do, either as individuals or as grade level teams, they'll apply for SIM funds. And again, that's for special projects and different things that that might be of interest to them. We're trying to ask our teachers to explore new resources, find creative solutions to challenges that they're experiencing in the classrooms. And these are just funds that we can use to help support their efforts, to incentivize them, stipend them, maybe for some before or after school work. So that's been great. Lots and lots of teachers in each of our schools have applied for SIM funds this year, and we've been really encouraging that. Finally, just to sort of wrap up here, I want to let you know that our just in terms of next steps, that our district-wide committees that are participating in this work of the strategic plan will continue to meet for the remainder of this school year. We already have some summer work weeks that have been set up, and then we'll reconvene again in the fall. In the fall, we'll start to take a look at those action steps within the strategic plan that were marked for the 1920 school year. And I think that lots of positive work has taken place. Again, the strategic plan has really helped to serve as a guide, and I think it'll continue to serve as a guide to direct the work of the school district. So lots of proud things for us to talk about as administrators, as leaders, but certainly a lot of great work that's taking place in the schools with our teachers. And I credit a lot of the direction to the strategic plan that has really outlined some important work to move our district forward. So, thank you.
Thank you. Sue?
Is it all right if we ask questions each time, or do you want us to wait to the very end? Or?
I guess
I
we're
would
gonna have
do
a
it
session right now, I mean,
I think
talking.
each of the three prongs
Yes.
should.
So if I could, to Christy. Christy, let's talk about SIM funds for a minute.
Sure.
I'm not sure the whole board understands that whole deal there, but I was part of that SIM fund program for a number of years, and it supported a lot of the kinds of activities I wanted to do, from farming earthworms to growing in anoles or whatever. But are we advertising that, pushing that out to our staff, so our staff, and I mean staff, that money can go to nurses, it can go to teachers, it can go to OTs.
That's right.
Guidance, whatever. It's not just the teaching staff, well, because I think OTs teach, I don't mean it that way, so do nurses. But are they really getting some advertisement about that those funds are available and they need how to apply and?
Yeah, and I guess I'll speak more toward, more to this year. We really purposely put this in as an action step, as an objective within the strategic plan, because we really wanted to make sure that we were encouraging more frequently. Some of those funds were going untapped year to year. And so, yes, much more purposeful. Our school administrators are talking with their staff, encouraging them to apply for these funds. They're here for you, and it's not about just participating in a committee that you might have anyway. It's really about thinking about doing something different,
Right.
Something that's creative, maybe something of interest to you. Maybe you have a specific challenge that is, that you're being faced with in your school or in your classroom. So apply for these funds and explore resources. Try to find ways that you can work with your colleagues to advance.
Yeah, I'd like to see those funds used by our staff.
Yeah.
And that account emptied out every year instead of it just sitting there.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Sean.
Well, it certainly has this year. It's putting more focus on it.
Back to Goal 1, Objective 3.
Goal 1, Objective 3, yes.
You talked about performance-based assessments, moving away from standardized assessments. I'm wondering what that will look like for grade 11 students. I know many years ago, grade 11 had their own standardized assessment, and then they also did the SAT on top of that on their own, correct?
Yes.
And then more recently, the SAT replaced the standardized assessment, and they're doing that in the school now, not having to go out on their own and do it.
That's right.
So how will this impact grade 11?
So objective number 3 really doesn't speak to state accountability testing, and I think that's what you're talking about. So it was that the state accountability assessment looked a lot, for grade 11 students, looked a lot like it did for students in grades 3 through 8. And the state changed that, about 2 years ago, and now SAT School Day is now, it serves a sort of a dual process, purpose. It's the state accountability measure, but it also allows students to use their score reports for applying for colleges and universities. So that's slightly different than what we're talking about here in Objective 3. This is more of our local assessments. Yep.
Okay, so the performance-based assessments are not going to be replacing the state standardized?
No, these are more day-to-day type assessments. So students will still.
In my mind, I'm thinking the PACE programs, the PACE, we have the PACE schools in the state, right, that are more, are those more performance?
Right, and
Those are
so,
sta-
yeah,
Those are
those,
state standardized, we're not talking about that.
we're not.
We're talking like the difference between a multiple choice test and something different than that?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
pour the liquid into the beaker and show me you can measure
Yes.
50 milliliters.
More competency-based, right? Asking students to take the knowledge and the skills that they have acquired and now actually apply them into something that might be more hands-on, might be more of an activity that, that they're doing with a peer, with a partner, or in a small group. Definitely something that's more authentic, and we're finding that our students are much more engaged in that kind of an assessment because it feels so much more real life to them than having to memorize. And then, as Dr. Farah just said, maybe, circle a multiple choice kind of an assessment. We're not doing away with those types of assessments, but we know that our students are much more engaged, and we're getting more information from some of those performance-based assessments in terms of, being able to assess what students know and what they're able to do with the new knowledge and skills that they've acquired. If that makes sense.
Back to goal 2, objective 4, with educators being lifelong learners. With the, encouraging professionals to be self-initiate their learning, is that something they would use the tripod results for to help them identify where their areas of professional development, where they might want to improve?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. In fact, those, we did the tripod survey just this spring, which was just a couple of weeks ago, that individual teachers got their own personalized results. And they're actually spending time right now going through and reflecting on the data that was shared by their students and thinking about goal setting for the upcoming school year in a variety of areas, whether that be classroom management, whether that be in terms of captivating students, or whatever one of those areas of the tripod survey that they find that they might be challenged with, setting some goals and also determining what kinds of professional learning might be necessary for them.
So that
Support
that
those
really
areas.
helps show the value in that. The teachers are finding the value in that survey.
Yes.
Okay, excellent, thank
And
you.
our schools are as a whole as well.
Yeah, perfect, thank you.
Sheila? I get a question. Actually, it's for you too, Dr. Wilson. Remember I asked for the list of who, we had these 3 committees, these 3 subcommittees for strategic plan, right? So I went in to look for minutes, and there are none. I can't find any minutes for these subcommittees.
For these teams.
For the 3 subcommittees, so I'm trying to figure out, do you know what I'm saying? Because this was coming, so I went in to look for information and see if I could get kind of acclimated to it. And there's no meeting minutes. I can find curriculum, I can find facilities for basic facility meetings. I could find those, but I couldn't find, does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yes, no, I
Team minutes.
I get it.
Those-
And
those-
I think part of it is when the committees meet, we sort of consider these more notes than we do minutes, because it's not a formal process like that.
Right.
But it is notes. And every subcommittee sets up their own process to share with either the public or their committee. I think a lot of this has been shared with the committee, but perhaps we're not sharing it with the public.
I just,
So if that's the case, then,
well, for me, I'd
Yeah.
like to see the conversations.
Well, maybe
Do you
at
get what
least
I'm
an
saying? Like,
update. Yeah,
Yeah.
you met on this date and topics
well, I would just
were-
like to see the conversations, like, oh, we talked about,
Yeah, just
I don't
topics.
know, bringing in this for the
That's what we
elementary schools. We
do with
talked
the
about
notes.
Right.
just kind of an idea of what's, facilities. What are we looking at? What needs attention? What's going on? How does the members of the committee, what their input is? Does that am I making sense?
Yes, but I don't know if the notes are taken strictly that detailed to say what the members are thinking.
Yeah.
I mean, it's work product, really. It's,
Right.
What was discussed and were there any important decisions what's the next steps? But what I'm hearing from you is you'd like to see more public opportunity for people to go in and look, and I think that we can set that up. I don't know if it's set up in your individual subcommittees. Your subcommittees can see it, but I don't think we publish outside.
Fair.
It just, like I said, I was curious. I'm an information person. So I'm looking for, okay,
And the rest of you.
what was talked about in the group.
The rest
and
of you
see-
want the same thing?
I think it would be great, because this is the strategic direction of our district here. It's probably one of the more important for people to see it and like where we're going. So I would say yes, I would personally like to see it up there.
Okay.
I think one of the things that would assist in that is taking what you're presenting here and putting it into those folders, because that way you're not going to have to search through our board agenda packets to find it, because really this is the summation of
Yeah.
your meetings. So I would suggest, I don't know if you really want to have to go back and reconstruct notes for every meeting, is take these
That's what I said, an
summations.
update. This update would be great to have it on the.
To put it into those folders so that the public could find it, because they'll never find it in the agenda packets.
Right.
That's
and-
what I would suggest.
And we can also, at that time, we can put who's sitting on the committee. And I did send that information.
You did send that
Yes.
information.
I didn't publicize it, I just
No,
sent it.
no, but like I said, I just wanted to kind of go in and see, what's being discussed, what's being taught, where are we, that kind of thing, and I couldn't find anything anywhere. So,
We can help with that.
thank you.
Oh, can I just say a couple things here? You mentioned bringing consultants in for math and science
Writing this year as well. And writing,
and writing.
yes.
You have some excellent consultants here in the middle and high school teachers. I know their pedagogy is maybe not elementary, but I know even at my level, a lot of times when we bring consultants in, people are disappointed because they know that there's probably somebody within the body of our faculty that probably could have done the job as well or better and understood the demographics of the student population, having seen what they're getting at the higher levels. So I'm not saying never bring a consultant in, but I think sometimes we try to look outside when we really might have the resources inside. Just a
Yeah.
thought.
You know,
Especially in the
you're
science
absolutely
end.
right,
You've got
and-
all the experts. It's just a question of
Yes, we do.
bringing those content areas down. Well, for the elementary.
Yes, and
But
we've begun
writing-
to do that, actually. Yeah. Some of our curriculum committee work has incorporated our secondary level, more content experts in conjunction with our elementary educators, and having some of those same curriculum-based and instructional type conversations. So yes, we're doing that, as well as I had shared, the NGSX science training was very specialized, but we're doing that in conjunction. You're absolutely right. We've got some great content experts at the 6-12 level that have been helping us out.
And, back to the whole, I keep seeing STEAM in here, STEAM this, STEAM that. And then what I see at the high school level is the number of students taking advanced courses in math and science keeps dropping. So we need to figure out a way, if we're pushing all this into STEAM, why isn't it continuing up through the high school where it needs to? And, you talk about skills development and coding. Coding is essentially, in some sense, a mathematical skill. So we need to keep addressing that. We need to find out what's happening as these students go up, where you're pushing STEAM, making it fun, but they're not staying engaged enough to get into those advanced courses in the math and science, which means that ultimately they won't be in the STEM fields. I mean, have you tracked? I think it would be interesting to track the percentage of graduates that are saying they're going into those fields and or ultimately end up. I don't know if you have, say, like a 5-year look back at graduates to see where they are 5 years out. I mean, colleges do that, but I know it's a little different, but.
That's
I
for
really
a
think-
monetary basis, so they can keep track of you.
Yeah, but it's also,
Alumni.
it's also just kind of see how,
I
we do
know.
it for program assessment and accreditation, is to say, are you meeting this? What is your student population lacking and what do they need to improve on? So I constantly am, bothered by the fact that we don't, I know we have students capable. And I'm not just math, science, English also, that we're not seeing them get to those upper levels. We've got to figure this out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you're actually speaking to one of the action steps that is within our 5-year plan. I know you served on our subcommittee, and that came up. Let's survey our graduates. Let's get a sense of where they're going after graduation. And so I just don't think it was marked for this first year of strategic plan implementation, but it's actually an action item that is at some point within our 5 years, we had slotted it for.
And it's an important point too for the students that are going on. We have a lot of students that go on to community college here, and I don't think we're doing I hate to harp on advanced placement because dual enrollment is probably a more important, better thing for the majority of the students that are looking to go into college based on where our students are placing out. So we need to keep looking at those aspects.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a great AP committee that came together this year, and they're starting to identify how can we increase enrollment in our AP courses. They've done some great work. I know they've met multiple times already this year, so some recommendations coming right from them as well. So.
Okay. Sue?
So I agree with Dr. Farrar about STEM and pure science. We agree on pure science and math. So I think if the STEM programs, we've just barely started. If this trend slipping down and not attracting as many, I'll say juniors and seniors, to our higher level math and science classes, which they're capable of taking, is 5 years out, I'd be really worried because we'd had STEM here and hopefully some better elementary science happening over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years. It may be a little too early to panic that those numbers are trending down, but I think we need to keep an eye on that going forward, that STEM, where it's, includes art, so it's STEAM, isn't just pure math science, and that those kids may be going into technology areas more than they're attracted where I want them to be in the sciences, but I want to keep an eye on that, and I agree with looking at the kids 5 years out, what they're doing after they leave here and go on to college.
Okay. Jen?
We talk about this being a living, ongoing document, and part of what Kim talked about and something that came up this week, the career day, is that what it was called at the high school that they just had? There were a lot of great pictures. I think maybe it's responsible for that. But some people did comment about looking at those pictures, the clear gender delineation between what career rooms were mostly all male students and which ones were mostly all female students. And we hear a lot about it, but when my attention was drawn to that and I looked at some of those pictures, that visual was really telling. So I don't know if there's any, and I'm not trying to single out and discard the male students. I have a male student myself, but if there's any plan to look at how to keep the female students who seem to, middle school, high school, we know, taper off from their interest where they were in elementary.
Yeah. I do know that we're trying to capture, more girls in the science, math fields. We're trying to, engage more of our, even at the elementary level, trying to engage more learners at an early, at that early age. I know that they do a couple of events at the middle school, the Girls in Science and STEM. We've had some great community members right here in these towns that have come into the schools, talking with girls, talking with, the young ladies about, those possible career paths. So we just need to keep that up. We just need to keep doing that.
Yeah, because, in the elementary school, we do see it, we see the interest there, and even a little bit in the middle school, and then it starts to, I'm sure there's a lot of studies and research,
The research is you lose girls in math and science at middle school.
What,
You-
after
Forget
seventh
about, don't
grade.
even look at the high school, because if you don't get them
They're
in
gone.
6th, 7th, and 8th grade,
right.
you've lost them.
That's right.
That's where,
there's a lot of reasons why, and I think that
there are a lot of
culture
reasons why.
speaks to some of that social, emotional piece that I don't hear probably to capture, but if we could just think about that. If we're-
Absolutely. We're going to continue to focus there.
Thank you.
We will.
Okay.
Anybody else? Okay,
Thanks.
thank you very much.
Thank you, Christy. Susan, you are the school culture and climate.
So this year, we have really focused on 2 goal areas. We've met 3 times, and our focus has been on really looking at district-wide core values for climate and culture. Goal 4 is that we're building collaborative learning environments that are focused on mutual respect, support, and positive engagement. We are charged with the responsibility of creating a 5-year plan. At this point, we have achieved a very competent group of stakeholders that really represent our community fully in terms of parents, counselors, teachers, school psychologists, building level administrators, SLT representation, and Kristen is on our team to build the culture and climate. We have proposed and will meet again in May for a reflection meeting to finalize our drafts. At this time, we have a mission statement, vision statement, and core values. Core values that we're looking at are respect, responsibility, accountability, empathy, sense of community, pride, and safety. In goal area 5, we're looking at fostering collaborative engagement of parents and the community to address the social, emotional health, and well-being of our students. At this time, we're looking for to create a district-wide response system that will offer interventions and supports for children and family in crisis. We have done some walkthroughs, some of the pieces that we have in terms of looking at the core values that each building has already implemented and is working on, the No Bully training program materials, TPAF training and information, the second step curriculum, which is our social and emotional curriculum given by or provided by our school counselors. We are at our reflection meeting going to look at the State Youth Summit outcomes. This is student voice. Timberlane students were represented in that summit that the governor held. And Dan and I are also working on the system of care with our counselors, social workers, behaviorists, to really develop that system within the district. We also had members of the subcommittee that provided input to the development of the March Professional Development Day, and this was devoted to the theme of social emotional learning. Included in this were speakers from New Hampshire Office of Wellness, delivered timely information and resources to teachers, as well as the No Bully program trainers were out as part of their year 1 contract. Next steps for this committee will be to have our final meeting, which is a reflection meeting, and then we'll go over the core values, mission and vision statement for finalization, and then we'll also be establishing standing meeting schedule for next year, as well as taking a look at the development of that 5-year action plan.
Questions? Sue?
Thanks, Susan. I'm hoping that as part of what your team is doing, you make sure that you're well represented at the Timberlane District Wellness Expo that we're having September 25th, using the Y facility as our spot where we get better parking and a little easier in and out and better space, and not involved trying to set it up in the caf at 2 o'clock.
Yes.
So I'm hoping that you get that involved and your team comes to that.
And the other piece is that we are already working on new guest speakers that will also be there. So we meet monthly, and we can certainly provide an executive summary of that update, so you can see some of the things that are in the works.
Okay. Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Last but not least, Mr. Gary.
Yep, thank you, Dr. Wilson.
Facilities.
All right. So we focused on goal number 3 in the strategic plan. And I'll just read it because the folks at home don't have the paper in front of them. So Timberlane Schools will be known as providing quality facilities that are safe and will ultimately increase student opportunities and activities for the 21st century learning. So if you look at objective 1, develop a comprehensive facilities master plan that will serve the Timberlane community for the next 20 years. This plan shall include major renovation and construction projects. So I'm going to repeat for emphasis that this plan is to capture for the next 20 years what we're going to do with our facilities. So I'm going to talk about the needs assessment, which was one of our action steps to complete this year. And I'm happy to report out that that has been completed. Some folks last night, Mrs. Sherman, Mr. Doobie, got a sneak peek at some of the data. It's an Excel spreadsheet, over 2,000 line items, done a complete building inventory of all the components throughout the district, when it was installed, when it's due for replacement, and we're able to filter out and filter, sort, and report out, by year of replacement, by the discipline of the construction, whether it be site, electrical, fire protection, just the different disciplines in that, and even subcategories of those disciplines. So it's a very helpful document that I feel will get us to the next step of developing this facilities master plan that will carry us for the next 20 years. I did want to give a big thank you to the folks that work behind the scenes in assembling the data with me in the facilities department. That's Rodney Mills, Gary Paradis, Kevin Bartos, Jake Mannion, and Amy Schroeder. They did a lot of work collecting the data, photographs, and a lot of detail that we just did not have in the district. So as we're talking about the next steps, having this data is going to be really important. So in order for us to get to that next step of having this facilities master plan of what we're going to do with our buildings, the committee is recommending to the board that we do engage a design professional to help us plot out this project that's going to carry our facilities forward for the next 20 years. So I will go to objective 2, right? And that is obtaining community support for the facilities master plan through effective communication about the process. Now, we're unable to address this because the master plan itself is not complete, right? In the action steps that are part of the strategic plan, it does state that we would have the assistance of a design professional. So I will be asking the board for support on taking it to that next step. Objective 3 was prioritize short and long-term projects and build the projects into the budget process, which we did during the budget process this year. This one that we just finished up, we brought it to the school board, the capital improvement plan projects, also to the budget committee, and we'll continue to do that in this upcoming budget process as well. So that's what I have for an update on the facilities end, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you do.
Lee?
So just to piggyback on what Tom was saying, that facilities assessment that he shared with the CIP committee last night was amazing. There was a tremendous amount of work put into it, and it was very detailed. It's an asset to have a document like that as we go forward, especially addressing facilities. So just good work on that.
Oh, thank you.
Jen?
The part about the community support, when I'm looking at this, I'm feeling a little bit like which comes first, the chicken or the egg. So I understand we're going to have a facilities master plan. In order, I'm guessing, to do a lot of the things that we would like to do, we're going to need to get a bond to pass. In order to get a bond to pass, we're going to need to build that community support. So I'm not sure that we want to push off that community support piece, because I think that really needs to come first in order to even get to that point.
I can see that, yeah.
Bear with me here.
Yeah.
So, the bond is over after this current budget cycle, correct? Which gives us maybe $1.8 to $2 million a year that we'll be dropping the current budgeted amount. Isn't that about the correct amount? We have a CIP, which was put together a few years ago, and Mrs. Schumer did an excellent job. It's been a lot of work for that committee. It started up from scratch. The CIP, I think, has, and the superintendent spoke to this, and I know we spoke to this probably a year or so ago, really needs to be looked at again in its entirety, because we've got projects coming due that we know are just not, major projects aren't going to be done in that time frame. So I know there was a CIP committee yesterday. I couldn't make it, but I think one of the things the CIP committee needs to do is really think about maybe considering having that whole CIP go back to SLT and say, let's look at this again and try to prioritize out for the next 3 years on projects that aren't major. So that's one of the things. And then we're looking at developing a master plan, and that's amazing that you've got 2,000 lines, but I don't think we want to have a designer come in and drop something that's 2,000 lines and say, here, let's go with this and tell us what to do, or we're going to be spending a lot of money.
On the other side, we would spend an awful lot of money if we invited a designer in and said, tell us what we should do, right? So the intent of this document was to capture everything within the existing footprint that we're in right now, right? And assess the needs that are coming down the road, right? And I would love to report out to the board that we have another 20 years in our infrastructure, but the reality is that we don't. And it's not to sound the alarm bells to say that everything is going to fail on the day it's due for replacement based on engineering recommendations. But it's a good time to start planning this. And having gone through the process with design teams and building projects, if you have an inventory of your building's components and you give that to a designer, it's going to save the district an awful lot of money, because that's less fact-finding that they have to spend their time doing.
I don't disagree with that, but if you say to a designer, I want you to, we just did a major building renovation project where I was working, and you've got to have, I think there's got to be some sort of and I know Dr. Wilson disagrees with me, the board, you already know what I'm going to say, we've got to take a look at what our budget is, even before we start to, in some sense, try to promote this or give it out to a designer. And we really, I think the board or SLT, we need to have a couple sessions that are just brainstorming sessions after we see this, after we know, I mean, even just the 2 years I've been on the board, last year we had $1 million in boilers, but I didn't hear anything about boilers this year. Then we had the septic system, but I haven't heard anything. And then we had talked about having a large retaining area for water. I just feel that we don't have a good grasp of the short term, 3 to 5 years, much less the 20-year plan. And some things, we've got to have a better, the board, I think, or somebody needs to have a better grasp of facilities as we move forward, thinking about the budget within the next 3 years, what we're going to bond. What would the alternative to a major bond be? Maybe $2 million for HVAC equipment.
Sure.
So I think there's just a lot of this, and I know you've done a tremendous amount of work, but this is the time for facilities, because we are now in by March, I would think that the board is going to be wanting to try to at least present to the voters something for bond. And if we're going to do that, I think by the fall, we have got to have a very good idea of what we're going to be looking to do and the money. And I'm not really sure how we're gonna get there. I'm trying to back this down from next March, and I'm concerned we're gonna have to keep pushing out.
Again, if I may, Mr. Chair, is that, I mean, I have the document for the boilers in front of me, and I know I was tasked at the time to just get a cost to replace all the boilers, right? And I had said at that time there were priorities, right? There were some boilers that were past their useful life expectancy. There were some that were past their life expectancy but still had parts on the shelf to be able to repair, so we were good there. And then there were some that we just needed to act on. One was the Pollard boiler. I think that working in the parameters that I've taken just from different meetings of where we're talking about a $20 million bond or a $30 million bond in a 20-year, it's going to be tough to quantify that project without the design services to be able to have it ready for March. And I just want to caution the board that these things do take time, and with such an investment, it's worth doing our due diligence to provide a good design for the voters, if that's the direction that the board wants to go.
I think we can do it, though. We're only in April. But if we don't start to really think this through and backwards think this from the bond, it's not going to get done. There's a lot of work to be done on it, I think.
Because I would think that the goal would be is that, at least I'm speaking for myself here, I would like to see going forward that we would have the bond payment be equivalent to what we're paying right now. It just is projected out 20 years. Or maybe we might figure out that we might do something smaller than that, and we only have to go out 10 years, and then we can reevaluate at the 10-year time. The thing that I worry about is that if this ship leaves, which meaning that the districts has next year's budget is not going to have this $1.8 million cost in there. That's going to then feed through the whole budgeting process. It's going to go lowered. Then now you're going to turn around and ask for that in a subsequent year. You're going to be it's going to be a bigger fight with the fight's the wrong word. Let me back that track. Talking and convincing the district's residents that to support this after they've already had that reduction. And I think that this board has, and prior boards have taken the fiscal restraints to show that we could spend their money very wisely. And what we're looking to do is through a bunch of different programs that we've done, we've been able to absorb the teacher's contract internally for the cost, and also hopefully this bond payment. And so that, if you look at where we would have been multiple years ago, projected out 2-3 years, I think we're a lot lower than where we are. And then now the voters will be able to say, you're not adding more money on top of that, you're adding it from down here and bringing it up to here. That what I think is the goal. But if we don't, backing out what Dr. Farrow has said, the timeline of getting this all done is if we don't get our act together and get it all right, we're going to miss that boat in March, and then you're going to have all of a sudden, like the dominoes will fall, like I just said, and we will have a lower budget just by natural not doing anything. So.
Yeah, I don't envy the position you're in. I mean, it's difficult, and
Okay.
I mean, if you have 1.8 million, I can spend it.
No,
I can
but we should
definitely
sp-
spend
we
it on
should
projects,
have
is what I'm saying, right? So,
Sound
however the
program that we
mechanism
can
is
show
to
that
fund
this
it,
is where this money's going
We're gonna do that.
for things and stuff like that.
Sure.
We shouldn't look at it as like, okay, we can get 1.6 million over 20 years, back that on out with interest and so forth. Here's an influx of say $20 million. Go spend it.
Yeah.
You need a different approach to that. You got to show what you're going to be doing with that. But that's just my viewpoint. Sue, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was just saying that this is great discussion. I'm hoping Brian is enjoying his vacation, as he should. But I really think that we should do a work session on this, or a workshop, whatever term we want to use, where we have Tom, where we have maybe even members from the CIP committee that are well-versed in planning and looking ahead, and have some of this, kind of iron out some of this. Is it a bond? Is it, are we, and yes, you need to back it out. If we're ready, if we want to go March, we got to work backwards, just like we do with the CIP. You got to work backwards. Because we got to make some decisions and get our act together here. And I really want Brian here for all of that discussion.
absolutely. Lee?
So Kim, the points you raised, and Sean, the points you raised as well, those are some of the things we talked about last night at the CIP is the items that are on the plan, moving target's not the right word, but things are gonna come in, things are gonna go out of it. A need that was put onto the CIP plan 3 years ago, observation windows.
Yeah.
Isn't really a need now.
Yeah.
Right, so those come out, and we talked at CIP last night, what the timeline looks like for the building owners to get that feedback back into the CIP and adjust what those are. Those are the asks, if you will, for the coming year. And maybe some of those get shifted around. Long day.
Pocketed.
We talked about the bond and the potential for a bond, and personally, my feeling, and I know, Sue, you want to have a work session on this, I think it's a great idea. The risk of the bond expiring this year not being included in next year's budget, that's a big concern, right? Because then to go back to the voters for the ask of an additional 1.8 after we gave them a reprieve of 1.8 by the bond expiring, that's a tough ask. So personally, I feel we're already behind the 8 ball if a bond were something we were even foreseeing. This is work we should have started, and this is through no one's fault. It's just timelines move, right? We should have been doing that work 2 years ago to get ready for, a bond ask in the coming year. But yeah, they were all great points, the things that we kicked around last night.
Sheila?
2 questions, actually. Kim, when did you say that if we were going to do a bond, that paperwork had to be in?
It's really not that far in advance of the March date. I think it's just a couple months. I'll have to pull out that email and I'll have to send it because there's a lot of new members on the board. I did, just because I was thinking ahead about what this bond was going to look like, I called up the bond bank and just had them, I just threw out a couple numbers of, millions, just to get some idea based on the interest rate at that point. So it's only, you don't have to be very specific on, what the project is and things like that. So it's not as bad as I would think. But in terms of the bond, what's probably more important is knowing what it's going to be and having the time to explain it to the voters and essentially sell it to the voters and have the voters support it, which that would be a case where I wouldn't mind spending some money to have a public relations person come in and try to explain, because it would be worth it to get it out to the community somehow, or even just a flyer, have somebody write up a flyer, because I think a lot of people would read that. So
I've got one other question. I really don't want to sound obtuse or anything. What exactly do we need a design professional for? What is there a specific project you're looking at that you want somebody to come in?
Yeah, no, I can, that's
What
a
exactly
good
is-
question, because I think that people see
I'm sitting
design
here
and they
going-
see somebody's going to try to make a shrine to themselves, right? And
no, I'm just trying to figure
They look at architectural
out-
projects that go bad, right?
What do we need designed?
So something on this level, right? And when I'm talking about something, I mean the district building components. I'm going to back up a little bit and say that the lion's share of the items that were replaced on the last bond are going to be up for replacement, right? So your HVAC devices, 20 to 25 years for a useful life expectancy.
Right.
Your roofs,
Right,
it's very similar, right? We already have some that are past that.
right.
You would need architectural services to analyze current code, right? To make sure that we're putting in the right roof systems, we're receiving the best warranty possible, so that we're not replacing it while we're paying it off, right? That's something I would never want to bring
Right.
to you. So that's what a design firm would do, right? So also just engineering too, right? So would we look at bonding, let's say, and this is just for the sake of discussion, I haven't run any numbers on this because it's not responsible to do so at this time. Would we be responsible putting in $15 million into, let's say, the high school, right? If the high school was built as a 50-year building, 52 years ago, would we be responsible investing in that without a structural analysis to make sure that the building will last that long, right? That the roof is safe, where we don't have to shovel it every single winter, right? Because that structure was designed before snow loading, snow drift loading was even a factor in building code. So that's the benefit of
Okay.
going to a designer, because we have that stamp on the drawings, right, that give us less of a liability concern. And also it helps with permitting a project, right? A project this size, Our local building departments, as we know, are very small, right? And if they feel better on these types of projects if an architect and an engineer have a stamp on the drawings. So I hope that answers the question.
No, it did, actually.
When it comes to items
It
like-
actually answered it very well. What I hope is that I'm hoping that your committee and your committee get together
Yeah,
and look at the labs in the high school.
sure.
Yeah,
That's on the CIP.
it's on the CIP, but I would love for these two groups to get together to bring it up to where we need it for these kids.
Yeah, I
To
think-
make sure that we have the right stuff in there, so we're good to go on our labs. They need it desperately. So that's what I'm kind of getting at, like,
Sure.
are we taught, you know what I'm saying?
I can
Like,
answer that, a question on that, right? So the subcommittee we have, right, is a little different than theirs, right? I picked a very, very diverse group of folks.
You got a big group of folks.
We do, and I'm going to read the names because I want to thank them first, right? And then you'll be able to kind of get a pulse on the group, right? So I have Mr. Boyle, Mr. Busby of Busby Construction, Ken Blaska, I have Angela Fantasia, Mike Flynn, Todd McCormick, Patty Mangini, Mark Pedersen, Rob Collins, Scott Strange, Don Woodworth, and Melissa McDonald, who works with Susan, the special ed. We have very differing opinions, right? So those would be minutes you'd probably want to read because it'd be
Well, that's what
entertaining,
I'm
right?
saying, though. You want to
So,
get,
but that's the best kind of group for this type of project, right? Everybody has competing interests, but if we come to some sort of common understanding of what's needed in the buildings, I think that's worth bringing forward. And the reason why I shared that list is someone like Melissa McDonald, we brought her on because when we're thinking about special education classrooms, as Susan said with the social emotional learning piece and the occupational therapy rooms, we want to make sure those spaces, right, they're not just boxes like we're thinking of, right? The classrooms are different than just a series of boxes connected by classrooms. They're educational spaces, right? To go back to the science labs, they need a desperate upgrade, right? Something that we would also task a designer with, right? We know just from a space utilization study, right? Looking at how the buildings are being used, what's being scheduled. We have 4 modular classrooms in the back of the high school. Those are temporary modular classrooms that never are temporary. They always stay put, and they're always used for well past their useful. So we have a need for 4 classrooms. So a good discussion to have with a designer is, do we build 4 new general ed classrooms, or do we spend the money and build 4 state-of-the-art science labs, right?
Well, I can tell you the answer to that question.
So can I.
yeah.
You build 4 new science labs because renovation of science labs is
Yes.
almost impossible if you're bringing them up to code.
That's right.
You're gonna have to build new science labs. That's a.
100% agreement.
So, that was just a rhetorical question.
Or agreeing.
I am right with you.
Agreeing, good,
Yes.
good.
No, this is what I want to bring to you. I want to have a collaborative relationship on something that we all know is needed, right? We need upgraded facilities, whether it's science, whether it's the athletics, whether it's,
Which
we
goes-
definitely need.
Which
we
goes
need-
back to having a work session, because there's
Right.
lots of discussion that has to come, and this is the time to do it.
You answered my question very well, thank you. It's just, it's too much.
All done, Sheila?
I'm done.
Okay, Jen?
Did you want to start? You
Oh,
can go
so,
ahead,
thank
Sarah.
you, if you don't
You
mind.
guys notice I sort of just do a round loop here.
Sorry. So what is the process for engaging a design professional? Does that go out to bid? Is that something that would go out to bid, or do
Well,
you work?
believe it or not, we actually have a policy
Okay,
on selection of an architect.
okay.
And we would abide by that. So what I would recommend is, the committee wanted me to bring it to you. I could just get ballpark pricing to take us to that next level, right? And bring back the pricing for you. That's not putting anybody under contract. It's just to get the ballpark before we put an RFP and start our process. But it sounds like if the group wants to do if the board wants to do a work session, we can hash it there. But
And then what would be the time frame? Like, is it something that takes a couple of months to kind of get a ballpark estimate and then move everything forward? Like, how long are we looking for before we would have a finished product, do you think? Sorry.
No, I just, I don't
Well,
know
we're
if I have.
talking about time and how time is of the
Yeah.
essence, so I'm just trying to kind of understand,
Yeah.
what the process would be.
Truth be told, I haven't engaged in any discussions with any architecture firms, but I'm happy to get that answer and bring it back to the group of, let's see the timeline.
Yeah,
I didn't
okay.
want to engage anybody before
Oh, yeah,
I
no,
brought it to
that's-
the board.
Okay.
I struggle with the comments about 50-year-old building being at the end of its lifespan. I know, I don't know why we would invest in buildings that we think are, I mean, the high school that I went to, I think, is almost 100 years old. It's been expanded, it looks completely different than well, parts of it look completely different than when I went there. I know Atkinson Academy is certainly not 50 years old.
Sure.
I just want to make sure we don't get into a situation where we're looking at, some of us, our homes are older than 50 years old. I mean, I think we expect buildings to last more than 50 years.
I can explain where my comments were coming from, and that was more on why we didn't engage a designer, right? Because once you exceed a certain threshold of renovation in a building, right, you have to bring the entire facility up to the current code. And that's what I wanted to, I want to make sure we shake that out. We don't want to get into a project and then halfway through it realize that we have to bring everything else up to code, have to go back to the voters and ask for more.
No, we don't want a PAC 2.0. That's what we don't want.
Right.
But that's the only reason why I say engaging somebody like that for this purpose, they would be able to shake that out and make sure that, if we have a budget that we have to stick to, then we can only renovate a certain percentage and we can only renovate certain items. We just don't want to trigger something where we have to, look at 7 brand-new schools, right?
Thank you.
I'm getting ready to make a motion here. And my motion is going to be something to the effect of, and I'm just tossing it out there now, is that, that the board direct the superintendent to come back to us with a month-by-month backward plan from March of 2020 to indicate what the timeline is going to be, what needs to happen by month for us to be ready to go out for a bond in 2020. So that's going to entail somebody getting a hold of the bond bank to figure out when that paperwork has to be done by, kind of having a, and I'm not, this isn't, we can't just talk about, well, yeah, it's going to take we need to, if we don't do this soon, the window is gone. The window may already be gone. I really don't know. We may be too
Right.
late, Lee. It should have been done 2 years ago. I don't know, but I think unless we make a motion that's clear with definitive, this is what we need to look at, that we're gonna, time is gonna keep rolling along, because summer is coming.
Yeah, you got to tie an action item to it.
So my motion is gonna be that, to direct the superintendent to come back to the next meeting with a month-by-month timeline of what has to be done in order for this district to prepare to go out for a major bond in 2020.
Have it on the ballot, you mean?
Yes, to have it on the ballot by 2020. So it entails determining when the last date is that we can make the application to the bond, when, what I think we need to get several scenarios from the bond bank as to 20, 40, 60, 80 million, just to figure out what that's gonna be. I don't know how long we want to bond off, so probably get 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, I don't know. So that when we sit down for a work session, we have a very good idea of what it is. I think from your perspective, you've got 2,000 lines, but I think for the board, what's major, what's HVAC roughly, what's roofs roughly, what's windows roughly, or something like that, just to give an idea of where this is going and rough costs, so that we can move forward, because this conversation is too nebulous. We don't have any data. We need
Right.
some data, and we need a timeline.
Agreed.
So that we could see if we don't hit that timeline, that we have to hit these timelines, or we're not gonna be able to
Yeah.
bond.
Could I
So-
point you in the right direction when it comes to the timeline for the bond? Is I can also provide, under the last building program that the state did, they released a guidebook, and I can provide that schedule to the board. They have a prescribed schedule of, kind of with that end in mind of your bond date, and then backing off it. I can provide that to the board, because that's already, that's what all of the schools use to to plan out for their bond.
That's fine, but my motion is to direct the superintendent to develop a month-by-month plan for a bond to be issued in March 2020, and to develop a table showing the amounts that will be required of the taxpayers for bonds from 20 to 80 million for a period of 20 or 25 years.
20 to 80 million?
20 to 80 million.
I'll second that.
So can I just, for clarification, because that is, that,
too long a motion?
yes, so what I'd like to do is have your motion to direct the superintendent to provide a month-by-month detailed timeline to plan for a March 2020 bond. And then in the discussion, we'll nail down that the details to include it, and I've been trying to grab those as you're going along, the 20 to $80 million, different bond options, the bond application process, design plans, the project costs or rough costs. And Tom gave some information about the book that he has that can guide the, so as long
I'll
as I
accept your
capture some
motion.
of that, thank you, as long as you capture that. So this is the detail part that will follow the motion that was made by you. Just want to make sure I'm capturing it.
So read back our motion.
Okay.
Are you taking credit for it now? It's our motion?
It's our motion now.
No, so the motion is going to be the basic part of
Okay.
it, but the discussion is going to nail down what the expectations of that motion is.
No, it's fine.
And that's what that list was.
Sure.
So the motion was to direct the superintendent to provide a month-by-month detailed timeline to plan for a March 2020 bond. That's your motion. And then your discussion will include, the details of that motion will include, or the expectation will include, the things that I just mentioned. And if there's more that you want to add, now would be the time to add that.
And before the second, is it, Dr. Wilson, is that, you're the acting superintendent here? Is that a reasonable
I'd
request?
be glad to take that request today.
Okay.
I'm not going to hold it very long, but
No. I'm asking you if that is a reasonable, we're not trying to be unreasonable.
Yeah.
It
The
is?
cost estimating is going to be very difficult for me to put
Well,
a responsible number in front of you.
we're not looking for,
And you want to
Even
say
a
when, maybe
ballpark, I
that's
just
the
don't want to
biggest
be
question.
irresponsible with the board, so.
You're not asking for a cost estimate, though. You're just asking
not.
for, you're asking for a timeline.
Okay, oh, I just
Not
wanted, I
yet.
want to be
Not
clear,
looking
all
at the
right.
details of which roof
Yeah,
we're
we're
gonna
just looking
fix,
at
or
like,
if it's
how many roofs, how many, you
necessarily
know,
No,
that
we're
at
not
all,
even
not
looking at
even
the-
that.
not even looking at that.
No.
2 weeks. Let's get the timeline, 2 weeks.
Okay.
Next meeting,
Do this
timeline.
in June, do this in
Do you
July,
want
do
to
this in
schedule-
August.
You gotta work your way backwards.
That-
do you
that
want
will
to
be in the
schedule a work
timeline.
session?
Yes.
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 Not
Can
before
we
the
get a
next.
second on that
I
motion?
did second
Yeah,
that.
thank
I
you.
do have
Jen.
I do have a comment on that. My only comment, unfortunately, based on some feedback that we've gotten before about motions that maybe have not been specifically clear in the motion, even though it has been, the details have been in the discussion. I'm a little bit concerned about not having the details in the motion. Is there a way to capture some of those details in there so it's a little bit more clear in the motion itself?
Lee was raising his hand, maybe.
I think part of that before was
You
that
have to amend it.
the minutes, the discussion portion of the minutes didn't capture the finer details. So I think if the minutes are going to capture the finer details as part of our discussion,
It appears that's what Kathy's trying to do in the
yeah,
discussion.
that's what it
Right.
sounds like.
Right.
I mean, in essence, what we want to do is we want to get a matrix from the bond bank, you know, this dollar amount, this number of years, and sort of different permutations that you can have inside that. I mean, just so that we can have a data set to figure out, you know, it's pretty obvious that the more you ask for in the bond bank and you only keep the same number of years, it's going to cost you more per
Yeah,
year.
that's probably 15 minutes, really, because the bond bank will just send you all that information.
They just
What's
gotta
the most
send it.
important part, and what Jen's speaking to, is we need to have the month by month, and I understand what you're saying. In the past, if we have not put the directive within the motion,
Yeah.
it does not get acted upon in the way in
We're
which.
going forward here, we're moving forward,
I'm
right?
I'm not talking about that, no, I'm talking about, our accountability.
So there hasn't been a second on the motion, so.
I seconded
Yes,
it.
you seconded it.
So did you want to amend it? I'm good with it being amended if you feel that way.
I'm sorry, can you read it one more time?
Dr. Farah, motion to direct the superintendent to provide a month-by-month detailed timeline plan for a March 2020 bond by the next board meeting. With the details, I mean, we can add with details to include, or, I mean, we could certainly,
Is it acceptable to the board if there's any clarification that's needed, is that Dr. Metzler would come to me to grab that information?
Of course.
Yes.
I think so.
I think the details should include any deadlines that we have to meet.
and that was by the next board meeting,
Yeah.
for the, out of the motion anyway, if you're talking about.
Yeah, unless it's somehow it's, it's not feasible, but
Impossible, right.
then Dr. Metzler would be talking to me about that
You
beforehand.
guys are talking?
Pardon?
You guys are talking?
Oh, yeah, no, I agree.
Sure, okay.
I do want to bring up just one issue that might delay some of this, is we have vacation week next week. And there may be some key people working on this who are not here.
Understood.
You don't need a vacation, Tom, do you?
I do.
I believe Mr. Dowd wanted to say something.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't even see step there, Jeff.
Well, the request seems relatively straightforward. The motion seems
I
very,
don't think it's just a very, I'm not looking for a lot of detail here, but we've got to have them.
We have to have a plan.
Figure this out.
and we'll-
It's to start,
Well,
we've got to start.
and we
Part of
can-
that's gonna have public hearings that are
Oh,
required by
it's way,
CRSA.
way
Yeah,
back.
no, that's all part of the whole process.
and I think what you'll find is that lining everything up for a March date, yeah, we do work backward, but we do have to hold our public hearings. We do have to do all that beforehand, so that really pushes our dates
Yeah,
much farther ahead
yeah.
than that. And to put everyone at ease, we do go through the bond process every year, or have been with the Hampstead School District. There's not a lot that we need to do ahead of time, but we do need to make sure that all of those procedural elements that we need to comply with from a bond issuing perspective are met. We retain counsel at a certain point to make sure that we have certification from them on all the things we do. One area for clarification, Jennifer, would be, and I'll ask 20 to 80 million, right, in a bond pricing, $10 million increments.
I would do 20.
So 20, 40, 60, 80, and then over 20 or 25 years.
I think you can go up to 30 years with a bond back.
Yeah,
Up to you.
we could go up to 30 years. I don't know, I just don't know. 30 years seems like a long time for a bond.
would
What's
spread
the
it out.
board feeling?
Would spread it out nicely, but the problem is, as Tom indicated earlier, right? Your average lifespan on
20 or
is going to be
25.
20.
Fixing things while you're still paying for them from the first
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Yeah, it's like taking a
back to
7-year loan on a
6
car.
or 7. Just thinking of 7
Which
years.
is where we are right now.
So
No, we don't want to go out to 30.
in terms of clarification, that's the one thing that I need to clarify. It doesn't need to be in a motion.
Okay.
Maybe 20, 40, 60, 80, 20 and 25 years each. And they're about a page each. These are about a page each. They look a lot like our current bond schedule. So that's why I ask, having to have a booklet full of bond proposals, so, good.
Okay, that's fine.
So can we just clarify one more time? Because there was conversation about all the things that you wanted, and Dr. Farah just said that, well, we don't need all that detail, we're just, what exactly do we want? So I just want to make sure that the minutes reflect it, that you're getting your plan, you're getting a document is what you're asking for in 2 weeks. A document that has the month by month backwards from getting a bond. That also includes the financials associated with bond options, different bond options.
Correct. Yep.
Is that basically it? I know that you talked about also having some projects or some idea about that, or is that
Rough
for
costs.
later? Rough costs, is that a later time that you'll determine what those are gonna be? Because I'm not sure, you don't have a design engineer to come in and kind of guide you on that. So I just wanna make sure that,
I don't know that
That-
I'm looking, are you looking for I'm more interested in the timeline and then the dollar amounts times 20 to 25 years.
Not looking for projects yet. It's
Yeah,
not, he's
not
not
looking
done.
for, not in 2 weeks, but this at least gives us something to work off of.
Right.
To figure out where we stand and how fast we're gonna ramp things up.
so it's a procedural timeline. is what we're looking for.
Procedural timeline, and as Mr. Dowd said, you gotta look, I guess the drop dead date is the public hearing or whatever, that's your.
Bond
it's-
is, yeah.
yeah.
Bond deadline is a little different than the public
Yeah, so
hearing.
those sorts of dates are gonna be, and you'll know, those dates are gonna be really important because that's,
But I would ask, between Mr. Dowd and Mr. Gary, and you do this, in essence, 4 workdays, because I know you're on vacation and you're gone. I don't know if you're here, Mr. Dowd, But-
Yeah, I will be around. The bond piece.
We can get that.
We can get that.
Yeah.
I am a little bit somewhat skeptical of our ability to get that, and we can endeavor to do that. I think we can put together a time frame period. I think it's going to be a matter of scope.
That's what I was just going to bring up. I mean, my concern is being able to provide a scope for the bond, right? Because if we were to just have blanket language that said for the repair and renovation of the schools in the Timberlane district and it gets voted down, are we prohibited from doing any maintenance and renovation work that following year?
Well, I'm worried about.
We're getting way past where we.
No, I know. I'm just trying to think of that timeline. Even defining the scope is going to be well past December in essence.
I don't think we're
Defining
asking
the
you to
scope
define the
yet.
scope at this point. I think we're just looking
Yeah.
for our schedule and when do we have to
Yeah,
define
yeah.
the scope
That's
by?
right.
When do we have to? That's what we want to see, so we don't miss the
Deadlines come
deadline.
on up, yeah.
Because we don't want to all of a sudden realize, oh, wait, we didn't know we had to do something by June 1st, and now we're scrapped and we've just lost
Sure,
10 months, and
sure.
now we're looking
Okay,
at.
so it's
20
more on the feasibility of this
Yeah,
whole
it's just so
idea.
we all
Generic
know, right.
timeline.
Yep, got it.
For all of our sake, so we're all making sure we're hitting those deadlines.
I'm with
the
you.
way
I just
they
wanted
need
to
be
bring
hit.
my concerns,
Fair.
move on the record for them, so.
Right. What are the deadlines that we need to meet in order to get this on the ballot
Right,
in March?
because none of us want to miss that.
So we can have that for you at the next board meeting.
Call the question.
Okay,
Call the question.
and I don't need to have Mrs. Belcher read
Guys
it
get
again?
it. I think we
I
got
think
it.
we got
Okay,
it.
all those in
got it.
favor, raise your hand.
The vote was?
John?
8-0-0. Thank you, Mrs. Belcher.
Thank you very much for
Can I
your
just ask
updates.
Mr. Chair.
Can I
Chris?
just, I know she had the motion, but I just have a couple of quick questions for Tom. Two things. The workshop, I think, is a great idea. And I know you're saying, well, we want to have this information, and we have school
You're in charge.
vacation week.
Go ahead.
Stop. I have a million questions, and I'm not gonna belabor them here to stop you two. I'm not gonna belabor them here tonight because we all wanna go home, but I do think the workshop is the perfect place to do it. I think we need to do it sooner than later, because there's so much information I wanna know and have an idea of where we're going and what makes sense and what are we looking at. Living through the safety complex project and knowing how long and how
I
detailed
worked on,
that
I worked
gets.
on that as well, yeah.
So, and I'm just thinking that, and like, just the fact of going out to different facilities, when we see that we need something, it's doing the site visits of other schools that might have the same thing, things of that nature.
Sure.
I mean, I'm assuming that's something that you're doing and looking into too, when you start having these projects come about.
Oh, for sure.
So-
Bring the people that aren't well, versed on like some of the newer buildings. I
Or
would
some-
definitely do site visits.
And somebody's
with
putting
people,
out an
yeah.
idea, you go to see what it looks like versus what the other
Yeah.
school may have done to see what works or doesn't work. But then part of my other thing, again, you said you have Angelo and Blaska on your committee, so I know athletics is another thing. When you're looking at that, if that's into play, which we'll hear at a workshop, your projects and your things, are you looking at what other schools are doing now that they're getting funding? We're talking about getting the community support, but you're hearing about all these other schools that are putting in these great facilities, and they have local banks, local companies that are doing this. So are we looking at what all these other schools are now doing to try to find out their funding creativity?
Sure. Yeah,
So we
I
can
mean,
bring that back with us, because that,
100%.
can tie into a bond, because if we can all of a sudden say, look, we have this, say, $2 million project, but we can get, the local bank to fund half of this and cut off that bond cost.
Right.
So I think, but that's something that needs to be done now, because you can't wait on that to research it if we're looking at doing a bond. Those are things we need to be hitting on now, what these other schools are doing.
Yeah, I'll bring a lot of items to the workshop, and, one of the things I can speak to, I've had experience with working with a performance contract, an energy savings contract. I believe you might be familiar in your industry, where energy savings would contribute to the bond payment, so it offsets the payment for the taxpayer. So just something as low-hanging fruit, such as like an LED conversion, right? There's rebates for that, that would offset the payment to the taxpayer. So I'll bring a lot of these, like whether it's fundraising, donations. I keep current on what other schools are doing. So.
But there are other schools that have gotten major contributions to our athletic fields.
Yeah.
Almost 50-50 matches and then some.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
like I said,
I
through
think
local
Gloucester,
banks.
Gloucester might have been one.
Gloucester has it through New Balance,
right.
Trinity or Triton.
Right.
Haverhill just got one through a bank. Salem just got it.
Yep.
Was it Salem? So all these it's out there, and you just, I mean, I'm listening to the radio today, Eastern Bank, how much money they're donating, same thing for all these nonprofits. So it's finding how these other schools are finding this funding
Sure.
and trying to tap into that same thing, because if, you know, you want to get the community support, and if we can say, look, we had a $2 million project, but we're going to offset $1 million because so-and-so bank is going to come in and do that, that's going to make people more excited to want to support a project like this, to think, you know, if we don't do it now, we're going to lose that ability. So that's all.
Good.
Valid point.
Agree.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gary.
Yep, no, thank you.
I'm gonna just move a little, with our agenda, because some people are here for the second item that we would be getting into is the last day of school, so let's move that up ahead.
Thank you.
So moved. I'm just, do we really need a discussion to everything?
As of right now, the school calendar, on the school calendar, the final last day for students would be June 17th, which is a Monday. So I'm here this evening to ask you for your approval to set the final last day of school to be Friday, June 14th, and the final contractual last day for staff to be that Monday, June 17th. So I was able to confirm that by Friday, June 14th, we will have had 179 school days. But if you remember, we've had some conversation about it's either 180 school days or it's X number of instructional hours. So I confirm for you that at all the elementary, middle, and high school levels, we'll have exceeded the number of instructional hours required by RSA 189:1 and 189:24, and that is accurate information up to include Friday, June 14th as the final day of school for students.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, I understand. I just want to ask, though, before we accept the motion.
Yeah.
No,
What?
I want to ask, how much do we exceed the
Right,
hours?
That's
How
what I
many
want to
hours
know.
extra you mean?
So I can share with you what those calculations would be for elementary, middle, and high school, but I just want to make sure that you understand the numbers were calculated based on this school year, taking into account, our early releases, our delayed openings, midterms and finals. We take
Right.
all of that into consideration. So at the elementary level, by Friday, June 14th, 1,017 hours. And at the elementary level, by RSA, students are required at least 945. The middle school, total number of hours by Friday, June 14th, 1,062. By RSA, at least 990 is required at the middle and high school level. Our high school, for ourselves, high school is 1,038.
And it's 990 for
Yep, would be-
required.
Yes, yeah. Sorry, I kind of put that in
So
two
we
different
roughly have
places.
almost a week's worth of plus of headroom. That's where I wanted to feel, is that
Yep.
we had an ample buffer before I did it. Now, do we have entertain?
Good question.
All
Jen,
right, we have questions. Go ahead, Lee.
Sorry. So rather than have the professional staff come back on Monday the 17th, it sounds like we have enough hours to end school Thursday, make the staff the last day Friday. Is it because of contractual obligations?
Correct.
Okay.
I'll second Jen's motion.
Okay.
I don't know, did I get my motion out all the way?
I wrote it for you. Motion to set the last day of school for students June 14th, with the last day for staff on June 17th.
yes.
Is that okay?
Motion made by Jen, seconded by Sheila. Is there any other information anybody would like to discuss on this matter? You gotta raise your right hand, not your left.
Kim has a question.
No, I'm just gonna, I was
Yeah,
taking
go
my
ahead,
question.
hands.
You don't?
No,
All
I'm
right.
ready to vote.
No, I'm done.
Okay,
Ready.
cool. I said, anyone else? Call the question. All those in favor?
It's not even 10 o'clock yet.
Pretty good.
It's getting close.
8:00.
800.
Students, staff, and families, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so now we'll go back to the Primex Contribution Assurance Program cap.
Double back to you.
Well, good evening. So this is I guess, a second session on the Primex CAP program, which Primex, I'll summarize for those who are maybe watching at home, our risk management carrier, otherwise known as our insurance carrier. Primex has offered the district benefit of what they call a CAP program, which would cap our premium amounts for subsequent years to not greater than 7% of the previous year for property and liability coverage. And we had reviewed this at the last meeting, and the board, I think, had some questions on the nature of the pooling arrangements at Primex, whether entering into this CAP program would impact our pool standing or our pool rating or shift us into a different pool. I guess I'll just cut to the chase. The bottom line is what benefit is there for Primex, right? For us to enter into this. And I did get the answer. There has to be something, right?
Right.
So, and we're probably going to be insuring with them anyway. Primex uses reinsurance companies. So they insure themselves against catastrophic loss. And they're able to benefit from a lower rate, lower premium on those policies where they're able to show a longer commitment of their membership. Where they're able to show multi-year commitments among their members and subscribers. That's what the benefit is, essentially. So they're seeking to do this to reduce their own reinsurance costs, which in turn help districts like us. There had to be something, and that is what it appears to be. It does not appear, from what has been represented to me, and you have the risk pool practice agreement, which was put together in 2012, but I think, especially if you look at section 1.9 and you go through the agreement in different sections, it explains a little bit more about their program and how they operate. It's a real nice summation of Primex at that time, which I believe still holds true. I don't believe, at least what I've been represented, do not believe that we get put into a different risk pool by entering into this CAP program. However, some districts have experienced increases, and those increases may be up to that 7% on an annual basis. When you look at our history, we had 1 year, I think, where we had a 9% increase. Well, under the CAP program, that 9 would be capped at 7. And then the next year, it would be, the additional 2 or wherever it would work out. Theoretically, if you had a 21% increase because you had a major claim, that 21% would be capped at 7% the first year, 7% the second year, 7% the third year, and eventually you'd be caught up. So if a district is experiencing higher or up to the max, up to the 7% policy premium, it could be because they actually have generated higher liability than that, and that just carries forward a couple of years.
It's a typical insurance, right? You file a claim next year, your premium's gonna have an increase. This is set by the cap. Because we're part of a pool, should a partner or another member within the pool have a significant claim, do they spread or sprinkle that premium increase across the pool, or is it increased strictly for that one member filing the claim?
No, my understanding is that there is some element of risk pool sharing, but there is much more of an element of we drive our own premiums. So the biggest driver in our own premium is our claim history, which I find.
Our own claim history.
Our own claim history, yeah. Which I find interesting is if you see, we had you have the schedule that I set forth, the memorandum. I think we had 1 year with 9% increase, and the rest are relatively flat. So it's, you almost look and there was some correlation that something happened in that year, or it's the year before, it was a claim, and we felt a bump. So if anyone has any questions, I'm more than happy to entertain them. From the perspective that I don't necessarily see us leaving Primex, if it's something the board is interested in, by all means, I'll put it out there for your consideration. If not, I'm, no hard feelings here. It really, it's just been offered, and I'm offering it to you.
Is there any questions for Mr. Dowd?
So we have action we need to take, right? We need to accept this and move on, or?
Accept it, and would ask if the board does approve this, they'll give me the authority to sign it on the behalf of the board. But I wanted to make sure what everybody wanted to have for the discussion on this topic before I ask for that authority. Is there anybody want to talk about this at all? If not, I'd seek a motion to authorize the chair to sign this agreement on behalf of the school district.
So moved.
Second.
Motion
So
made.
that's the motion to accept the 7% cap option from Primex and authorize the chair to sign on behalf of the school district.
And if I may, you have a motion that's been
Is there more than
seconded.
that?
We have an associated resolution as well, and it should be maybe on the last page.
It's on the last page.
Did I get the motion and second of who?
I motioned it.
Thank you. And the second was who?
Kim.
Kim, thank you.
Okay, let's do the motion first.
Good.
All right. All those in favor? All those opposed? Abstained. Motion passes 8-0-0. Okay. And now what were you saying about the resolution today?
So I didn't know if you wanted to incorporate into that motion, there is a resolution to, which essentially says resolve to hereby accept the offer of the New Hampshire Public Risk Management Exchange Primex to enter into property and liability contribution assurance program CAP as of the date of the adoption of this resolution, and to be contractually bound to all of the terms and conditions of the Primex 3 Risk Management Pool membership during the term of the Property and Liability Contribution Assistance Program, also known as CAP. Coverage provided by Primex in each year of membership shall be as then set forth in the coverage documents. That's the resolution, so if the board would like to adopt that.
I'm going to make a motion to have the chair sign the resolution for the board.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Now I'll call the question. All those in favor, raise your hand.
You guys are quick.
I like it.
Second was,
Kristen.
it's here.
And it was 8-0-0.
Getting good at this.
Okay.
Motion to have
Thank you,
chair
Mr.
sign
Dow.
the
Thank you.
resolution.
I will, I'll leave this with Kathy for the end of the meeting.
Good.
Thank you.
You got a signature one that you got there?
I will. I'll leave it with
Okay. Thank you. Next on our agenda is policies, first read. Jen?
Oh, policies. Policy GCO, that one already came before the board once. It was sent back, just to add that highlighted part, in accordance with the provisions of the collective bargaining agreement. IMBD. Did we talk about IMBD once
Yeah,
before?
we did it, yeah, it was, we did it at policy, but it never came back to school, but we just left it off.
Right, so that was my mistake. Remember when, Jen, you had some, we were crunched for time, so only put some on the docket, and then you saved the rest for the next meeting? I left this one off the list, so when I was going back through, I realized that I had done that, so this
Oh,
should
I
have been
thought we
on.
had this.
We
Christie, did we?
discussed this. This should be a second reading on this one.
I thought, Christie, did we talk about this, the 7th, 8th grade coursework?
You discussed that policy at the last meeting, but this
Right.
is a different one. This one goes with it, so you talked about it, but this is the actual policy that has not been adopted by the board.
Oh, okay.
So, yes.
The one you're thinking of referenced, I
I believe
believe
it
referenced
did.
this
And I
policy.
talked
We
about
did,
it, so
yeah.
that may be why it's fresh on your mind.
So I think,
These
the
first
highlight of that
reads.
discussion was about 7th, 8th grade coursework and getting high school credit for that, but it would not eliminate the need to take, X amount of math classes in high school, even if you got credit for one in middle school, because there's still the requirement to take or the requisite number of classes. Policy JICK. That policy pulled a lot of the procedure out of it. And so the procedure to report bullying is actually in the packet now, along with the investigation form. We had a really good discussion in policy committee about additional things that could be done, added to the school websites to make the information more accessible to parents, different reporting forms or ways to report that parents could look at, and I think that is something that's being looked at. But as far as the policy and the procedure, that's what's in the packet tonight.
So explain exactly what you did there.
With what?
The procedure is the
proc-
SLT,
No, the procedure's in your packet now.
It's
Right.
attached, you can see it.
but she's asking, did anything
Policy
change?
itself is still by
just-
RSA, it's
Just shifted.
right.
And we find this with, not a lot of our policy, but some of our policies actually turn into procedures, and they don't belong in the policy. The policy shouldn't have that included, because then it causes a quagmire. So we took the procedural language out
Procedural
of it.
pieces out and just created a secondary portion.
I know in the past we had been looking at what the actual bullying procedure was. I knew I could not find it on the website. I don't know what
Wasn't
it
up
was
there.
before or what was in existence before, but now it's, the policy is strictly the policy, and that's dictated by RSA, and then the procedural piece of it is pulled out and put into its own procedure.
Might I also add that the procedure is based on law? So even though sometimes procedures are not based on law, this one is based on law, so there are a lot of things we cannot change in this procedure.
Okay. Sheila?
Well, I'm glad she said that. So, the only real problem I have with the strict procedure is actually the very first, procedure actually for reporting bullying, and the part where it goes to notifying parents. Such notification may be by telephone.
Where are you? Are you in the procedure?
Sorry,
You're in
I
the
am,
procedure.
I'm on the procedure.
Can I interrupt
The
you?
text?
Please.
Page 2 of 5.
The procedure is beyond our purview.
That's right.
I understand that, I just wanted to say that I'm not happy with part of it. Is that okay? Yeah?
Which part?
Okay. The part I'm not happy with, and I struggle with this every time we talk about this, that we don't have a set.
Which part are you
concise-
reading, though?
I'm reading, what is it for? 4, notifying parents
Okay.
of alleged bullying. And it comes up and it talks about such notification may be made by telephone, writing, or personal conference. And it's because every school has a different flavor and every school does it differently. And I just feel it should be uniformed. I think it should be the same for every school. That it should come out of the SAU as a directive, so that it is uniformed in every school, and every school is doing it the same exact way throughout.
I know, but what if you can't get a hold of what if I'm working and I can't come in to have a conference?
Right.
No,
You're
what
gonna
I'm
have to-
saying is it should be in writing, period. And then if you want to follow up with a conference, or you want to follow up with a phone call, that's fine.
The problem is if it's in writing and it's
You
not
might
an
not get-
email, it can take
A week?
3 or 4 days, a week to get to me.
Well, and you might not get a phone call right away.
I'm on a job site and I don't have my phone with me.
No, I'm thinking I would want a phone call before I get it in writing.
Yeah, I would too.
I would too.
I want a record. I would like a record.
And I think you should ask for one, and that was part of a bigger
But that's
discussion that we
right.
had in the committee about having a spot on the website to educate parents and inform parents, because I agree, every parent should be asking for it in writing. But this language is by RSA, and so, and if you say, okay, everybody's gonna get it in writing, does that then mean that a principal does not need to call a parent when something happens because they only have to do it in writing?
Well, or you could say that they don't get anything in writing because they made the phone call. You could go either way with it, Jen.
Right, but I mean, I think that's why that's all in there.
I understand, but my thing is that there's no record.
You know, this next sentence goes on, the date, time, method, and location of such notification and communication shall be noted in the report.
Shall be noted in the report.
But the report is
And that's the,
confidential piece that nobody ever sees.
Yeah. I see Sheila's point now. So my daughter gets bullied. I get a phone call when I'm at work. I'm busy. I say, oh, no, we go and talk. But I never get anything in writing.
Right.
Which means that, say, she moves up to the middle school or whatever, and now I don't have anything, something happens again. I don't even remember, now, what was that kid unless I actually sat down and took notes, what happened the last time? I mean, I'm not the one that really should have I think that, I agree, there should be a requirement to document it to the parents, because when you have that, it also reflects that there's documentation that would be done at the school. I really think there should be, believe me, there was a case, when I wasn't notified, and I only found out through somebody else.
Well, for me, the bigger part of that even is if it's something that is just determined to be mean and not necessarily bullying, then there's no documentation for that. But part of bullying isn't, it can be a single episode, but it can also be a pattern.
Right.
And so I think parents do need to have that documentation that says that, and I don't know that the school's gonna have that. I don't, how, if it's not bullying, it's not gonna be on a form as bullying, but parents do need to keep track of that, because how else do you show a pattern of behavior? At which point, when does it become bullying?
So you're agreeing with us, it should be in writing?
I think parents need to ask for it in writing, but
Why should the parents have to ask?
Why?
It should just be
Should
done.
just be done.
I just want it uniformed through the entire district. If
so
one school's doing
instead of
every
or,
school
it
does
should
the
say
same.
and, telephone, writing, and personal conference?
I think you leave that sentence in, and then you say, what's that page, there's too many.
Well, it could
You have another sentence that says, parents will be,
3 out of 5.
such a notification
I think
shall
that,
may be made by telephone, right? Parents will, I don't know, ultimately be notified by writing. I'm not, so initially you call them, but it should be followed up, because
What I'd like to do is just ask Mrs. Rassico to come up for a minute and just talk about what does happen at the schools, so that at least we have that information.
So there is the investigation form that you have there. That's the process that the principals follow. As a matter of practice, they are calling first, because we don't know the state of the parent that's going to actually receive this child, whether victim or perpetrator. So they do call. There's also 4 formatted letters. So there's an investigation form for victim and perpetrator. They're being investigated. So the parents know there's an investigation going on, which usually leads to either an email or a phone conversation with the family. And then at the end of the investigation, there are letters that go home saying it's been completed and your child has been found to be a victim of or the perpetrator for. Those pieces are kept. That's part of the packet that I receive, and then I review those cases for reoccurring themes. Where we are in our process now is we're actually looking at those types of themes and working on them with children and families. So there are recommendations made that would be part of our JIC-X, the form, that the parents wouldn't see, but that would come out in the conversation. And oftentimes when students are put out because of their bullying act, they actually are brought back in a transition meeting with the family to see what recommendations have been followed up and what they're actually doing.
my question on this, though, you talk about that this is kept when bullying has been identified. But what about the cases where it's not bullying and the principal says, that was just mean? Do you keep those and do parents get notified?
That would be, I'm only here for the bullying piece.
So then how do you show a pattern if it continues to happen, if you don't have any documentation of a pattern of behavior happening?
Well, I think the piece is that a pattern does rise to a certain level. So in terms of what we're looking at the building level, if it's peer conflict, that is something that they keep track of, but it isn't something that I would rise to my level to do. And our hope is that the bullying piece is one part of it, but a student being mean, there are other ways that we're really trying to address that. And that would be through the climate and culture piece, the no bully, the second step in terms of students being able to listen. A parent would be notified at the building level by either an assistant principal or a principal. I mean, there are times
If the
where...
parent doesn't have that in writing, then they can't, then they have nothing to fall back on to come back and say, look, this happened here, 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 and here.
But there's also a form that you had recommended that we develop, which we put online as well. So if they're using that form, I guess maybe I misunderstood that was something that they would report in that way.
Right, so that's the piece that's missing here that I was talking about, that beyond this, that there was conversation in that committee about further developing ways for parents to have access online to be able to fill out a form and submit it, so that what you're talking about, Sheila, they would have documentation of their complaint that they made about bullying.
Sorry, I need to back up for a second. You did just say that there's 4 different letters that go out, whether it's substantiated, not substantiated, whether you get a plan, whatever the 4 letters are, right? So ultimately, what you're telling me is that a letter goes out. It doesn't matter if you find it's mean, or it's bullying, or whatever the circumstance, a letter goes out.
Right. And
Okay.
Sheila, just to stop you, in terms of a child being mean, it would be more specific to the behaviors. So we wouldn't interpret that piece. We'd be looking to stop, extinguish the behavior. Okay.
Right. But from what I'm gathering is that a letter goes out. So why can't this procedure just say written letter and/or phone call and?
The policy committee doesn't write the procedure, so do you want that in the policy somewhere?
But that's what I'm saying. It's, if we're sending letters, it seems regardless, I think we should be able to do that. And I think it should be standard. I just want something that's solid, that's standard throughout the district, that every school is using, and it's very cohesive.
Well, what about in bullet 9 that says, this is page 4 or 5 on the JICR procedure, communications with parents upon completion. It says within 10 days of completing an investigation, the principal or designee will notify the parents or guardians of the victims and perpetrators, ... It does not say in writing. Why don't we just add notify in writing to ensure that's done? I'm assuming that is done, but shouldn't we say
It is
notify
done.
in writing? Yes, but.
We do is done. But there are some times when we have families that wouldn't be able to read the document. So we have to have multiple ways of being able to communicate for a diverse level of communication.
I agree, but
guess.
even if they can't read that document, they should be
Send it.
notified in writing, so they have documentation in writing. So if you're saying that you have a parent that couldn't read it if it were in writing, certainly you would want to call them. But there should still be something in writing, so that if that parent has to go to court, somebody else can take that document.
Right.
You
But
can't
I
take a
think-
phone call.
I guess one of the things that I'm thinking about, and I'll share, is it in the bullying policy we want to address it, or is it in the discipline? So to go back to what you were saying in terms of being mean, is it part of the discipline process in our discipline that we look at that and have a means of communication in writing?
Well, I guess what I'm getting at is exactly what Jen was saying. If I've got Susie, and Susie is doing stuff to my kid, and it's not found to be bullying, it's not found to be bullying, it's not found to be bullying, but it happens every other week for 2 months.
Right.
And I don't have documentation that says
Right.
it happened every other week for 2 months.
Right. And that's why, Sheila, I'm saying, are we looking at the right policy? Should we look at the discipline policy? Because we may not look at something from a bullying standpoint at that point. We may address it.
I was gonna say, the discipline policy is gonna be more all-encompassing. So it's not just the bullying, it's gonna carry.
That's what I'm
these other
thinking
issues.
as we talk about it.
So.
I'm
Well,
wondering.
I'm looking
It
for.
should, but it should be somewhere, because you need to have that, because.
Right.
May I just interject for a minute? This policy is all around bullying.
Right.
When we get a complaint about bullying, we have to investigate it.
Right.
Letters go out saying, victim or perpetrator, we're investigating a complaint, so they get notified. Then we investigate it, then at the end, there's a decision that has to be made by the principal by looking at all the information. Was there bullying? Yes or no? You get a letter that says, yes, we consider it, or no, it's not considered bullying. You get a record of that. So those letters are used as the documentation.
Right.
What I'm hearing, though, is it's not actually written in the procedure in writing. So I think if we add that in, because we already have that practice,
Yeah.
if we add that in, we'll be satisfying, I think, what you're looking for. And at the same time, we get a more uniformed process across all schools, because I think we do use those forms quite a bit.
I just think it should be very streamlined. Everybody does the same thing. And it's in writing and it's followed that way.
So, Susan, can we add in writing, under the notification, in those areas where it's pertinent?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's in
One of
JICKR.
the things that struck me when I looked at this a long time ago, when you look at that JIC-X on the form, on the actual investigation form, it says confidential on it. On the page, 1, 2, 3, 4, on the 5th page, where it says investigation determination. That very first question, in the evidence of bullying section above, there was at least one investigative finding. Yes, proceed to number 2. No, stop bullying investigation and process as standard discipline investigation. So, if the answer to that is no, you're stopping that right there and going to the standard discipline investigation. So you're not going on to steps 2, 3, which is
The rest of the
notification requirements. So that's my point. If you're saying no, parents aren't getting notified, correct?
No, it says right there, they have to be notified regardless of determination.
Right.
So then you're not stopping right there.
But you're stopping your investigation because it's no longer bullying, it's now a discipline action.
Correct.
But you have to notify the parent that it is unsubstantiated bullying at that point, but then you can bring it the next step for the discipline action.
Which is, I think, the connection you were trying to make.
That's what I was trying to make, because it's from the examples you're giving, and if I'm misunderstanding, I apologize, but from the examples you're giving, where there may be an inconsistent practice is exactly where Jen has highlighted, and that's why I said, do you want to look at discipline? We could certainly add that step in the JIC-X form and add the information in writing that Dr. Wilson has addressed. But I think if you want that consistency there, that's where it needs to be. Parents are notified in writing. And I think that would cover whether it's substantiated, unsubstantiated, or you're now looking to say, look, this was reported last time on the bus, but it's the same theme. And that's what I'm understanding you, okay. So I think that's a better place to put it so that it's consistently involved. Some principals, assistant principals do it as a matter of practice to just notify in whatever means that a parent has asked for. But I think if you want that written documentation, that makes sense, so that there's your consistency. That's part of the flow chart in that area.
Right, but beyond that, I wanted people to hear that the other piece that came out of policy committee that's not reflected in here is the part about adding some standardized form that parents can fill out to report versus just picking up the phone and calling, because when you just pick up the phone and call, then you don't have any documentation that you in fact reported something.
And that document should be online because I think it was reviewed and looked at. So I think that form is there, but it's not the JICX form that's
Right.
required by law. So parents do have that, and have had that for a while. That was kind of up there. So that's there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I have a question. Sure. Something, again, now I'm looking at the procedure. So section 9 of section 2, under the communication with parents that we just talked about. And then, this is after the investigation is complete, within 10 days, school needs to notify the parent. And then it has, at the parent's request, principal or designee shall schedule a meeting to explain the findings and the reasons behind it. I think there should be a time frame in there, that meeting should have to occur within 5 school days or whatnot, and some explanation to the parents. I mean, waiting months for those meetings is a little ridiculous, or just not getting the meeting. And there should be some procedure and detail in there as to what happens if you're not, if you're still not comfortable with those findings after that, because there's no information. And that creates a lot of animosity and a lot of question for the parents, because you ask for a meeting, you don't get a meeting. It gets ignored, and then you're just left in limbo land, and there's nowhere. Where do you go? People look at the strict policy, and there's nothing there. They look at the procedure, there's nothing there.
So put
So
10
there needs
days.
to be some more information as to timeframes, as to the school's responsibility for the parents at that point. And again, what do the parents do if they're not comfortable with that building level decision? Where do they go? Do they come to you?
Yeah.
Do they come to the superintendent? And what is the procedure? There's nothing in there, and that needs to be defined more.
Okay.
You want us to take that back, make
Yes.
those changes,
Back to SLT.
Yeah.
bring it back the next.
Well, they don't approve this.
doesn't-
This is just this is, right, so
No,
they're
it's
talking
Oh,
about
you're right,
this
you're
procedure.
right.
Right.
But
I'm
they just
sorry.
make any
Recommendations that the board is
suggestions.
making
eyes
for
on it to see that
SLT.
it's been done.
All right.
I'd like to see if we can approve these policies for first read, and then maybe if we want to make a motion to send that procedure back, to come back to us with an update.
Well, we can approve it as a first read,
Read,
but they
right.
can bring it back with changes,
Yep.
can't they?
Yeah.
We don't
But
approve the procedure,
We don't
though.
approve,
Right,
we
but
don't
are you
approve,
looking
but
for
we use
changes
what
to
you
the
said.
policy or to
Or
the
forms.
procedure?
Right, so when we bring it back, the hope is that SLT will have looked at JICKR, dash R, and make the
Heard your
changes.
suggestions, yeah.
But the policy itself,
Right. And they'll have that conversation about it too, so.
I'll make a motion to approve the policies as a first read.
Second?
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, call for a vote. All those in favor? 800.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do it on purpose?
Thank you.
Surprising.
You're gonna throw that line in.
All right, our next agenda item is the administrator's report. Wilson?
Yes, in your board packets provided to you tonight, there are 3 executive summaries. One, and I guess these are follow-ups from other meetings. One is the gymnastics information about exploring an addition of gymnastics for next year. Another one is regarding some of the spring sports equipment and budget update, and the update of traffic flow at the middle school. So that's there for your perusal. As well, there's an invitation for the school board to participate in the end-of-year activities for our seniors. We have the Excellence in Academic Dinner, which is always a very nice event to go to, and it's just wonderful to be seated with the students and the families there. Senior Scholarship Night, Junior Award, Senior Award Night, and the graduation on Saturday, June 8th at 10 a.m. If you are interested, any of the board members are interested in participating in any of that, the high school is looking for a count. So please get this form back to Patty Mangini. She's also at extension 3900, and you can also email her with your intent to participate. That's all I had for the administrative report.
We'll move on to personnel report.
I do have the personnel report. And in your packet, you will see, we have one retirement. Christine LaCourse, the world language teacher at the middle school. She has 14 years with the district.
I'll make a motion to accept with gratitude and appreciation Christine's intent to retire.
Second.
Motion made by Susan and seconded by Sarah. Call for a vote. All those in favor?
And we
8-0-0.
second that. We hope that she has a wonderful retirement. We also have two resignations. Lauren Caffell, who is the Timberlane Director of Secondary Special Education. She works between the high school and the middle school. She has indicated her desire to move on, so her letter is in there for you. I don't know if you want to act on this separately or if you want to do it all as one under resignation. All right, I'll move on to the next one. We also have Tracy Cruz. She is the Timberlane Regional High School World Language Spanish teacher. She has included her letter in here as well. And Taryn Stoll, she is a speech and language pathologist at Sandown North.
Move to accept the resignations of Lauren Caffell, Tracy Cruz, and Taryn Stowell.
Second.
Motion's been made and
We give
seconded.
it a 2. That was a tie. Thank you.
Oh, give that one to Kim. Give Sarah the last one. Okay. Call for a vote. All in favor?
Thank you very much.
0-0.
Make a comment on these?
What?
Just want to recognize that 2 of the 3 resignations specifically call out workload and increasing responsibilities as a contributing factor to their decision.
All right.
That's it for the personnel report.
Committee reports. Reports to the school board. Go around the room.
The SAU Withdrawal Committee will have its first meeting on April 30th. The RSA has gone out to members of the Withdrawal Committee. There was also, just to let the board be aware, there was also a pro forma budget that was distributed. I am, in essence, acting as the chair of that committee until the chair is chosen. For the public and for the board, I want to let you know that I did not request that, and obviously neither did the board. So I know it's out to the members. That may become a public information, but I just wanted to let the board know that there's a pro forma budget out there, which was a little, in my mind, premature. And I'm also looking to see if the board would want to consider live streaming those meetings for the public.
Where are you going to hold them?
I think our first one's here, isn't it? Kathy, on the 30th? Is it in here?
I think so.
I think so.
I think it is here. Yes, because Dr. Maxwell will be here. We talked about that, yes.
Is it
Okay.
at night?
It's at 7 at night.
7
Yes,
at night,
yes.
The only thing, you'd have to check each time in terms of what's
Right.
going on. Yeah.
Right.
And then there's the technology, make sure there's a tech available.
Need somebody to run the camera.
So we can check on that.
Okay. Do we need a motion to do this, or just, is it the
If it's by
consensus of the boards that if the board, if possible, that we would live stream those meetings?
Yes.
Okay. Just so you know, that the committee is comprised of 2 school board members, 1 representative from the budget committee. There's 1 representative from each town that was chosen by the district moderator, and the superintendent is on the committee as a non-voting member. The committee will be doing most of its work over the summer months because most of the time these reports need to be done by the fall in order to move forward and complete the process as dictated by RSA.
Thank you. Jen, anything? No? Lee?
CIP, but Sue's the chair, I'll let her speak to that.
Okay. Kristen?
I had 2 meetings since last one. We had safety, Sue and I were there for that. It was a productive meeting, lots that was talked about. There was a question about appointing the vice chair, and Sue, I don't know if you want to bring this up, because you brought it up at the meeting, at the safety committee meeting.
Yeah, I brought up that the board chair had asked the committees to appoint or elect the co-chair from the board, and the members that were there for safety that are not associated with the board were uncomfortable about voting for one of us to be the chair.
That was a conflict that I did not foresee, so.
I mean, Kristen and I can arm wrestle if you want to, and she'll beat me, but she's a little stronger than I am. But it made them uncomfortable, that's.
And I apologize for that. I was just trying not to micromanage it, the committee, and I figure is it something that I believe that you two could discuss
could work
amongst
out,
yourselves and
sure.
come to a consensus? If not, I will then turn around and make that decision if required.
Well, Sheila's also on it too now, so. So we'll have
I
to-
missed that meeting though, so,
we'll have to
Yeah,
have
there you
food fight
go.
over it or something.
Can't miss the meeting.
well, that's what I'm saying, I missed the meeting, so I'm out of this.
So, but again, it was a productive meeting. And then, just noticing on this list here, we don't meet Thursdays at 10:15 PM. If you just want to update that.
Uh-oh.
I just,
That was the
that, I'm
safety
like,
time to
ones?
meet.
Yeah, I think those were the old times, and then they started switching, I think.
10:15
we don't
PM.
meet at 10:15 PM.
Oh, PM it says?
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm like, yeah, we don't do
got
that.
it. No, it's the
So-
PM.
We missed it.
But I actually
We
think we are going
9.
back to Tuesdays at 9.
Tuesday at 9.
9 AM.
I can pull it right off because they are moving around a bit.
And facilities is
It's gonna be
10:30-ish.
Right, and then next year they'll flip.
No, they're gonna keep it the same,
They
I
are?
think, Kathy.
I think that, yeah.
I think it's just easier to keep it the same way. It's easier for people that
I'll
are
just
coming
remove the
in.
times off that.
So, and then the other meeting, which I was unable to attend, was the Culture and Climate meeting, which I think Susan Roscoe spent significant time talking about tonight, as to where it's going and the future of that. So I don't think there's a need to discuss more of that.
Sue?
Yeah, I was at safety with Kristen, yes, lots of good stuff discussed, a lot of it confidential, obviously, because it has to do with safety of our students and staff. Facilities, Brian was unanimously chosen as the co-chair of facilities. And lots of good stuff there, but I'll let Brian report out on that. We had, CIP last night, great start, looked at where we're at, where we're heading with any new documents, and I thought it was a pretty good meeting. We had some good discussion. We kind of got off on talking about the bond, which won't be the CIP's issue. That won't be our job. But we did have some good discussion, so that's where I'm at.
Thank you. Sarah?
I don't have any committee reports, but I just a general report. I had the pleasure of attending the solo and ensemble night last night at the PAC. It was 6th grade through high school, and it was a very, very good evening. We have some really great talent coming up from the middle school up into the high school. They did small ensembles, duets. It was a great night. And then last weekend was All-State Weekend, and we were very well represented. We had 28 students, musicians total, split between vocalists, almost an even split between vocalists and instrumentalists, between the chorus, the orchestra, and the band. And it was held up in Concord, and as it always is, and it was just a great event for our kids. And it's always great to see Timberline so well represented up there.
It'd be fun to have one of those little ensembles come down and
Oh,
open
gosh.
the meeting.
They were so
The
good.
drum ensemble.
Oh my gosh, the drum
just-
ensemble,
they were
yeah.
Unbelievable.
The percussionists were
So
amazing.
just, I mean,
And
it'd
just the-
probably be a little loud. But it'd be fun.
It would be fun. But just the sixth graders coming up, these are kids that have only been playing their instruments for a couple of years and doing duets and doing trios and sharing that with everybody. It was just a great night.
Thank you.
Sean, if I may, I'm sorry, I forgot something I really wanted to talk about tonight.
Okay.
And regrettably, Mr. Valhouli is not here with us tonight, because I really wish he were, because I know if he was here, Roxanne did a great job presenting his report, but he was involved in the events that happened this weekend that were discussed, and I just wanted to touch on those, because as a Timberlane community, as was stated in his report, through Paula, we did the Run of the Savages, which is done to raise money for cancer awareness, and all proceeds go to the Jimmy Fund. This year, we add a little side fundraising on for a local family to donate towards childhood cancer in their name. And also then we had the Project Hope event, which happened at the high school later that night, that again goes to cancer awareness and helping families in our community with cancer. I've never been to a project, clearly I'm involved with the Run of the Savages at Pollard, and I've never been to a Project Hope, and this was my first year at Project Hope. And I just have to say, anyone that has never been to one of those should definitely go. I think it's an important thing for people in this community to go there. It's amazing what those kids do. And the reason I bring up both of these events is I learned from being at the Project Hope event that started, the Strut for a Cure, the fashion show, started 10 years ago, when there were two girls sitting at a cafeteria table in the high school, both struggling with cancer issues in their family, and thought, how can we do something to help the community? So 10 years ago, you had two high school students sitting at a cafeteria table who brought this idea forward. And it's turned into a success. Again, 10 years later, and as was stated in the report, they've raised $22,000 this year, but they raised $18,000 on Saturday. The Run of the Savages started 7 years ago with a fourth grade teacher who sat in her classroom with a student who was having difficulty, and she came up with an idea. So between a fourth grade teacher coming up with that idea, Run of the Savages ran this year, and we raised almost $8,000. So between those two events on Saturday alone, one day in this Timberlane community, we raised almost $27,000 for cancer awareness and charities, which I think is pretty amazing. Now, if you take that and you take it a couple steps further, that fourth grade teacher and those two students at the high school who came up with these ideas, 10 years of Project Hope, 7 years of the Run of the Savages, $200,000 has been raised just from 3 people having little ideas. And those are just all funds, and that represents Timberlane in such an amazing way. And I just think it's something that really needs to be looked at. There's so many people, and I'm not putting out names out there for a certain reason, because there are so many people, they had the ideas, but then so many people have come in and done things to promote these ideas. But again, granted, selfishly, I'm going to promote Run of the Savages, but Project Hope just blew me away. To go to that, to be there, to sit through that organization, the number of kids that are involved with that, the stories, you can't go there and not leave without tissues. It's just, I don't even know what to say, because it was just so overwhelming, the entire event. But again, to be able to do that in this community in one day, I just think was absolutely amazing. And I give kudos to the high school, the staff, the students. What an incredible night.
You said a lot of people involved, between the advisors, the students that did all the planning.
Yeah.
That's one, and then all the people they involved. You're talking about one of the most coordinated events of giving that we do.
It's unbelievable. I mean, and just the camaraderie. It's a family. That Project Hope group is truly a family. The way that they all sit there and they support each other, and the alumni that comes back to support it and to talk about it and to be there, and how proud they are of what, and they should be. Then you take it the step further. When you walk around the donations and the raffles that are there, and the businesses, the local businesses that donate so that they can raise those funds, it's just, it's a true community event all the way around. But I think, again, the district needs to be proud of those two events. The fact of a teacher and two students and how they can come together and raise $200,000 in less than 10 years to support a cause is just amazing. So, and it just so happens they fall on the same day the last couple of years, but, which has made it kind of fun. Different aspect to it, but again, just my sincere gratitude to everyone that's involved in
I would
both of those
second that
events.
as well.
So,
It's great to see efforts like this, and actually, thank you for the history lesson as well. I mean, I didn't know it was started out 10 years ago. No.
But I'm like, to go to that event and hear them and what they talk about, and like I said, it was so eye-opening.
The fact that it's on the same day is, I think that's even more amazing, because the overlap of the students and the staff who participate in both of those events. And it makes for a really long day. I mean.
And we do, the students come out to the run, we have some.
They get out there, they run, they go home, they get cleaned up and all.
Our student that was singing the national anthem, we had to have her done and out in time so she could leave and get to her hair and makeup appointment, so that she could then get to the high school to help set up and then sing during the project. So it's just, but the kids that do it, again, it's amazing that they're willing to do both or even just one, or just volunteer to write a thank you note at the end. I mean, it's amazing how they handle it all, and it just needed to be said. So,
thank you for the update.
Thank you for the extra couple of minutes there.
Okay, correspondence folder. I believe that's already.
Check registers.
Vendor and payroll register. Yep, that's going all the way around. And for other business, what I wanted to do is, Dr. Farah had mentioned about the withdrawal committee. One of the things that happened is, the requirements of doing a lot of this over the summer brought into light a lot of logistics of meeting some schedules and so forth. And with that, Lee has indicated to me that he would not, he would like to actually relinquish that role to another board member. And with that, I'd like to actually appoint Jen Silva to the withdrawal committee in replace of Mr. Doobie.
Okay.
With that. So is there any other business to come before the board? Jen?
I don't know who can speak to this. One of our presentations, it said the tripod survey was done for this year.
I believe that's what we heard.
And so I'm a parent, I don't recall getting any notification that survey was being done. I don't know if Dr. Wilson can.
I don't know.
Any information on that?
I can get information and follow up with you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Sarah?
I'm just wondering, will the board be extending invitation to our students, our championship wrestlers, our government club students that received awards, all state musicians, as we've done in the past, to this spring for recognition from the board? I didn't see it in any other of the future meeting lists. I'm just hoping that we'll be able to do that. Traditionally, we've invited those students in. So I'm just.
Is the board in consensus with that? Supporting that?
Was it spring students?
I mean, any of our.
We've had quite a few things.
Yeah,
so,
I just threw those out as examples, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Well,
scattered, it's usually been scattered throughout.
The scholar athletes, the model you win, or the government club. I mean, it's unbelievable the number of really great events that have happened in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, we've spread them out.
You can thank the people who led these great events. But if you
When-
want to talk about that, we can make some suggestions, but I just don't want to cut anybody out.
What is the time frame
That's-
for
that's
this?
the
Because
thing.
maybe
We
we
don't
could overlap this, the interfacing with the school board for these applicants with one of our workshops, where then we can start, do that, the student interaction, and then after that, then we can go right into our workshop.
don't usually-
Is
we
it
don't
a reasonable
televise
time
it.
frame that we would know these people?
We don't usually televise a workshop is the thing.
It needs to be a televised.
I'd suggest figuring out, talking to
Can we see the list?
Yes.
the list and then trying to figure out what we're gonna do if it's feasible. You don't wanna leave some people out and some,
Well, that's where do you draw the line? Because there's so many good things that are going on right now and so many
Right.
achievements from everybody. How do you decide which achievements to recognize here and not?
And maybe it's best to just, have a special school board meeting for just that purpose.
That's not a bad idea either.
Yeah.
Because,
I think that would
then
be
we
well
can
received.
do it and do it in a proper, and then we don't have to do it just here. We could do it, maybe at the PAC or something. I'm just throwing out
Yeah.
ideas here.
No, I agree with that.
I think they should be recognized.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
the
always
thing
done
is,
it.
we have to go back
Spring.
to the fall, correct? Because have we seen any kids in September?
We saw some last spring. That's the last time
Last
we've
spring,
seen
but that's what I'm
people.
saying, so we've got a whole,
So maybe we get the list and we'll work with between the high
I'll
school
work
and
on a list and
the SAU office, and we'll put together.
And we're hitting that hard time of year with senior
yeah, we're
events and
heading
everything
into a lot
else.
of
Senior
events.
events.
You know,
Right,
We're
so-
having honor society, inductions,
so many-
we're recording, we're having, soon, all the awards nights coming up for all classes, so a lot going on.
Whoa.
Bruce Brown.
So there's recognition, but not necessarily of groups, like teams or clubs, but rather individuals and things like that, and organizations.
With that list, could you give a couple of dates that are possible that, you know a lot more of the dates where all these different events are going on, so sort of like a recommendation for a couple of nights, and then we could pull the board and hopefully get a high attendance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
I
Kristen?
have one more thing, and I wish Mr. Geary was still here, but it seems I always get stuck with this topic. So a few months ago, I brought to the attention of the board that outside of the locker room area, there was a foul odor. And while I've been at some of the girls' lacrosse games, we're noticing the same thing again, and there was
Is that all back?
yeah, there was discussion at the leach field. Was there, is that just the rumor that the girls have? But it's pretty obnoxious to be out on the field, and actually some of the players said they're getting, sick, feeling very sick when they're out on the field.
I know that they've done work on the leach field, but I don't, and right now, I haven't heard of a report come to me about it.
Yeah.
Like, talk to Tom, we can inspect it.
If you could, because I had several, when I was out there, I had several girls come up to me and tell me that, and it was overpowering, so to be
The
out there.
facilities meeting.
Yeah, but if we can just do that and have an executive summary again, that's how we handled it last time, but it's just something I told the girls I would bring it and ask it to be looked into, so.
Dr. Wilson, can you see that we get an update on that?
Yeah, and for certain things like that as well, if it's something that needs to be done right away, you don't have to wait for a board meeting, you can contact us.
It was just last
Yeah.
night that they were telling me.
Oh, it was?
So, yeah,
Okay.
so, I knew I was coming here, so.
Okay.
It just made more sense to bring it up here.
10:15 PM, you could,
Oh, okay. Oh,
Sheila?
one last thing. I'm looking at future agendas, and we got the TTA climate survey all the way at the bottom past June 6th.
No, it's just, there's a placeholder. So the back burner list is not designated by a time frame unless there's a time in the second column. It is there because a board member brought it up.
Okay.
And it needs to be, it's a placeholder for when you can insert it. So, just for clarification. Like, I just added the facilities plan work session
Right.
at the bottom of mine.
Okay.
So that, I'll continue to add those, and then it's up to the board to do what they want with the back burner list.
And then what we do is we pick and, I'll pick and choose with Dr. Method's input to,
Well, you'd have to find out if the survey went out.
no,
So-
of course, but, we'll have some, all these different things, and figure how much that we could put into an agenda, so we're not here to midnight,
No,
but
I
yet,
get it,
so.
but time would be good.
All right, anything else?
One thing, the topic of those non-public minutes, we were supposed to be getting an update on that?
Oh, I haven't got an update yet. You're talking about the SAU board ones?
No.
Oh.
No, the
Which
minutes
ones?
that we just did. Recall what those were about? We were supposed to get an update on that?
Yes,
Oh.
I know what they are.
Oh,
yes.
Do we have an update on that? Before I don't want to call a non-public session.
can I
Maybe you
just
can
tell
show
me
them
what
to
number?
Dr.
I
Wilson.
don't want you to call it, can I just make one quick announcement, because before you
go
maybe
ahead.
call a non-public session, I forgot to bring it up under policy committee. I did get an update on the policy review.
New Hampshire School Board Association have everything they need, and they're looking at a completion date of about May 10th.
Nice, thank you.
Wash is looking it up.
So
The
how
lacrosse
for
team
this-
won tonight. It was a really heated game in Goffstown, and they were on WMUR, so if you get home before 11 o'clock, which we're going to, right? I can watch them be featured.
Nice.
Thank you.
We should,
I'll get you home by that time.
And JV, I think, won in a shutout, so.
Oh, the
We've
girls
never
did.
won at Goffstown.
Okay, good.
No?
Never won at Goffstown. The girls didn't do so good in games,
To that question.
but they're playing, they're in a tough division right now.
I know.
So they're doing well, though. They're coming along.
When does he do that?
I was noticing the varsity schedule, some of those D2 teams are playing,
Okay.
like, we're not playing Pinkerton.
This person's
No,
gonna make
they shift them all over the place. Well, Winniconne's D2.
You can't do anything.
But they're playing Pinkerton.
Yeah, well, we play, Goffstown's D2.
Oh, you mean,
And we played,
Okay, so I'm assuming that
We
we're
all
not
set?
going.
No, we're not going into a non-public
No.
on that. We have no update on that.
okay.
On either one of those?
Last time, anything else to come before the board, before I adjourn?
But there.
We don't- I assume there's no update on
We're
the other.
adjourned at 10:03.
I don't think so, Lee. I don't think Dr. Wilson's.